I want you to get together.
When ordinary people think of autumn, they imagine shorter days, cozy fires, curling up with a great piece of literature, and basking in the warming scent of cinnamon with shades of burnt orange, which your other half has decided to spend the life savings on to decorate the home for only 2 months, just as God intended. Yet we must remember that this transition into the frosty abyss of winter creates the perfect conditions for the spread of the pathogen known as Halloween. This disease causes people to dress like demons and go door to door asking for free stuff. This public service announcement aims to give you the correct tool to help you deal with these contagious commie behaviours when they manifest in your local community. First, you'll want to arm yourself with multiple shots of the best-selling paperback on Amazon called The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. With this PPE, you're fully equipped and well protected to handle what's to come next. Second, have a pumpkin spice latte and white girl autumn your time away in knitted cream shackets and pilgrim hats, because soon enough, Samhain begins. This is when the veil between the spirit realm and the physical world is at its thinnest, and possession, the main symptom of Halloween, is more commonly presented, causing this type of unironic cringe to start happening. Just look at him. This poor soul thinks he looks cool. And if you're not careful, this could be you. Together we can stop the spread of Halloween and flatten the curve. When you see fully grown adults playing dress-up and mirroring unspeakable horrors from beyond the void, remember your training and cure their vapid sense of self-identity by handing them one of our favourably reviewed treatments. Your country must develop herd immunity to seasonal cringe. So, spread the cure far and wide. Just like the cure, this disease does not discriminate by age. Emulating the infected, you will see children running around in bedsheets, knocking on doors, begging for sugary treats, and threatening to damage your well-earned property. Make sure to fill their novelty buckets with the one thing all children secretly want: a well-rounded and relatable education in biblical history. That'll stop the spread. The Nephilim Look Like Clowns and the inevitable booster volumes are currently the only known cure to thinly veiled demon channeling holidays. This is your best defense against this pandemic of spooky proportions. All you have to do is trust the science. Which you know we did, because I'm showing you people wearing lab coats and looking serious. Get your copy on Amazon today and be prepared for tomorrow. Side effects of reading The Nephilim Look Like Clowns include, but are not limited to, a feeling of existential crisis, a well-rounded knowledge of a Christian contrarian view on human history, a foundational understanding of spiritual warfare, and a healthy aversion to clowns.
Going on, man, and the more we peel back the layers of this onion, the more you start to see that there's a lot of like Satan worship and fallen angel worship and stuff like that that's going on. And that's the scary part to me. And I think that's what I started uncovering, and that's why I started talking about like wanting to be a part of this thing, because I feel like God put me in some of these places throughout my time in the military. Like I've been throughout the Middle East a lot, and so I feel like God put me in these places to kind of see things and experience things. That way I could talk about these things in the future, if that makes any sense. Like I didn't have no clue while I was there.
No.
Is that what happened to you too?
Oh, it's everybody's story who's had a brush with God. And
yeah.
It seems like we all seem to come out from some sort of horrible, wretched existence while also experiencing really terrifying, horrible, demonic stuff. And then we find Jesus later on. It all gets contextualized, and then we tell our story, and it seems to be really common. Like I said, at the time, you don't know what to make of any of it. And then afterwards, once you get saved and you get right with Christ, it's kind of like, okay, I know what... It seems like you were showing me something now. I get it now.
Yes.
It's kind of like, and then you get all the context to understand it when you learn the truth about all these things. And it's kind of like, I finally understand what actually happened and how I can use that as a testimony for God, really. That's what it all comes down to. So,
dude, 100%. And that's what I do now, man, is like I feel like I'm being used. Now, I've talked about it so I do a lot of spirituality. I'm not a spiritual, like I don't have crystals and all this stuff, and I don't even meditate a lot. I've done it before, but I don't meditate a lot. So I'm not like one of these, wear beads and V-neck shirts and stuff like that, kind of a spiritual person. But I do feel like there's people who are chosen in a way to talk about this stuff to help bring light to all this information. And I think that when preachers or whoever, people like us, when they hear the calling, or when they say like, I feel like I was called to do this, now I know what the hell they were saying, because I didn't think that before. I've never thought of myself in that regard. But then there's just so many things that have happened, synchronicities and all these other different things, that you just go, okay, I'm being used for God's will for something. So I need to speak out about this, and I need to keep going with this. But so I think that we're sort of light workers in some way. That's kind of what I call us, which is, there's light and darkness, good and evil. And I just feel like we're sort of light workers in a way, not special and with regard to like, we don't have special powers or anything like that, but just we're talking about information that helps illuminate or enlighten the path of others, And so I think that we've been called to do this in some way for a reason. And I think that as we go on, we're in this great awakening is kind of what I see we're in. That's why my show's called The Awakened Podcast, that we're moving into a new world or a new earth or something, or a new era. I don't know what you want to call it, but I feel like our role here, some of our roles here, is to kind of be beacons of light for people to light their path along the way, if that makes any sense.
Well, in a sense, I mean, I wouldn't use such language myself personally.
Sure.
But I understand what you mean. Once you kind of get the summons not through the letterbox, but it's kind of like God sends that message to you. It's like, right, get up. It's time to go and do what you were supposed to do. It definitely feels like that. and kind of like jury duty, you're not always willing at the start. It's like, oh,
right.
Really, do I have to? It's kind of have that attitude because it comes with a burden, Sure. But when you do fully
they're gonna
give into it,
they're gonna hate you. You know that, isn't that what Christ said? When you follow me, they're gonna hate you, or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, it definitely comes with battles against vicious wickedness in high places, spiritual wickedness and just evil people in general, and agents of Satan, if you want to call them anything, to get dramatic, but
sure.
Some of the interactions I've had, it's like you work for the devil if I've ever seen a thing, it's kind of, there's no other. I've had an email signed off from Satan, you know what I mean?
Oh, really?
And I know they were being facetious, they were being a bit, but it's kind of when you're in my game, it's kind of like, you think you're being, ironic, but you don't even understand the spirit working through you. It's that type of thing, Sure. But when, like I said, when you get that calling, when you get that, it's like a calling to take a leap of faith. Because I was a supermarket manager. I was a middle management supermarket runner. I had a small team that I would work every night and morning to set the shop up and close the store type of thing. And I was doing that for 5 years I was a manager. 3 years prior, I was just stacking shelves, And I kept my head down because my YouTube channel got taken off me for 5 years. Because I became a manager and they found the channel and they were like, you can't talk about these things and be a manager here. It's like, what if the staff find it? What if they get offended by the things you say? It's like, if they do, we can't defend you. So you have to make a choice. Either you be a manager or you step down and be a floor worker and keep your channel. And in a moment of pathetic weakness, I capitulated. I was scared. I needed the money. I had student debt, all sorts of things. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I just got this management position. It's a good opportunity. It'll set me up for the rest of my life type of thing. So I shut the channel down and I worked for 5 years as a supermarket manager. But for those 5 years, I learned a lot. And in hindsight, again, how it works, I think that was meant to be. I was supposed to take a break from YouTube and learn how to manage people, learn how to deal with the public, get a good sense of what it is to be a normal person again, because I kind of detached myself for many years when I started learning the truth, you know what I mean? And you become a bit of a shut-in hermit conspiracy theorist type. You can get a bit weird. So I think I needed to touch some grass and get out there in the general public and remember what it means to be a person again, And I'm kind of glad I had that 5 years to do that. because I was a angry, born again, on fire Christian, prior to this, who maybe wasn't ready to be a public figure or a voice because I had too much rage, anger, and hang-ups from my old life that I still needed to burn away. And I would say that 5-year break of not having the YouTube channel, although it was good for me and I think it was necessary and I learned a lot and I definitely calmed down, gained a financial standing and experience which has set me up forever. Thanks to God, I think that was the point. But then towards the end, I definitely started to feel like I'd kind of outstayed my welcome. And it's kind of, I feel like things started to happen to me. Really horrible things. Like I was accused of theft when I never actually stole anything. And I proved I didn't and got away with it. Like, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, there's no evidence here. Paul's unequivocally proven to us during this inquest he didn't steal anything. Here's the CCTV footage, evidence, blah, blah, blah. But the person who accused me never got any reprimand. Because and there's a reason why they were doing that. Because they didn't want me to be promoted. They wanted one of their members of staff, because I just moved store, to be promoted instead. So they tried to sabotage me. You know what I mean? But this manager who did this to me, nothing came of it. And that was like a first, like, you're kidding me. You moved me to this store to train me up, and then you try to take away my job. Well, my wife is 3rd term pregnant, by the way, and I'm about to have a child. All these horrible things were happening at a horrible time, But then obviously the I can't say it because I don't want to set off any censors for you, but the big event happened in 2020, which changed the world forever, And I worked with the public for that, and I saw the worst of people as I'm managing a supermarket during that time, the queues and everything, and the stock going off the shelves, all the stuff that happened. I not go into too much detail, but the abuse we all suffered. And I was like, my granddad just died, ventilator, the rest, and it's kind of, what am I doing, like, dealing with this mess? And then things kept happening. They hired somebody to be my boss from outside the company rather than promoting me after years of telling me they're going to promote me. It's like, look, one jab after the other, And I think in hindsight, I was angry then, but in hindsight, I'm like, this was God trying to get me out of the place. It was like saying, get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. You've had your time now. It's time to go back, type of thing. And then it culminated with me being grabbed round the throat by some idiot who I refused to serve alcohol to his wife because she had her teenage daughters with her, And he comes in and threatens me, grabs me by the throat, and all these type of things. It becomes a horrible mess. And the work don't care. It's just like a statistic to them. It's like, after that, I was like, what am I? I'm not a supermarket manager. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I quit. You know what I mean? It was literally like that. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. It's not who I am. I can pretend to be this guy and live a meaningless existence and hate myself forever. Or I could just take a leap of faith and go and do what I want to do. So I started a company with my wife, and she helped me have the courage to stop as well. She was like, get out of here. Let's get out of here. We don't need to do this. Why are we putting ourselves through this horror, So we did. We both worked for the same company at the time, so we both quit. And we started a photography company. And for the first year, it did really well. The second year, it didn't. But luckily, by that point, I'd started up the YouTube channel again. And it became a source of income that can support me and my family. And obviously, published the book since then. And now I'm doing what I love, and I'm happy. And there isn't a day where I'm actually working anymore. Of course, I put a lot of time and effort into this. Don't get me wrong, hours and hours and hours. But I never feel like I'm working. I enjoy every second of it. And I had to take that leap to say, I'm going to do what God's telling me to do. I'm just going to do it. See what happens. Like, just go for it. Like, finally, just take that leap and do it. And I have no regrets. And it's just been one thing after the other. That's just proven God has a plan for you. And if you should just take it, it's the best life you could ever want for yourself. He's not after a slave class who is going to make you do things you don't want to do. He wants you to live up to your potential, and if you just take that leap of faith, he'll help you do it.
Beautifully put, dude. Like, that's perfect. It's exactly what is. You just described your situation is 100% mine. I was working for a company. Not that this isn't about me. This is about you. But I just felt like sharing this story.
Go, please, yeah.
I was working for a company, dude, and it was a nonprofit, but I do marketing. I'm a photographer as well, right? And so when I got out of the military, I got a degree in marketing and all this stuff. And having a degree in marketing, it kind of and then I was a photographer in the Air Force. So having all these skills, I was like, well, this just translates right into like marketing, web design, all this stuff. So that's what I started doing. And I got a job working for a company, nonprofit, and I worked there for a few years. And just like you, dude, it was just every day, it was becoming more and more evident that I should not be here. Like I was getting angry. Never it would hurt anybody in any way, but it was just getting to a point where I was like underappreciated, and people would get promoted ahead of me, and people were making 4 times more money than I was, and I was making the company a lot of money and working 70 hours a week and stressed out. I too had my wife was pregnant with my second child, my daughter. And it was just like I went to this event one night, which was at a university. We were a nonprofit healthcare center, and we had this event at a university. And I went there, and I used to be in the military, and people who I worked with knew that I was a libertarian conservative type, so they assumed I had guns. They didn't know I had guns, but they just assumed veteran, all this other stuff. He's got guns for sure. But and I had a concealed weapons permit, so it allows you to carry guns wherever you want to, really, except with the exception of schools and hospitals and places like that. But I never carry my gun anywhere. To be honest with you, it's always safe at my house to protect my family. So I went to this event one night, and I just so happened to have a shotgun that my dad had given me in my truck. And I told one of the workers there, I was like, yeah, I got to get home because I got to take my shotgun and put it at the house. And so I left. That was that. And it was never like anything more than that. And then I got called into the office like the next, a couple of days later, that Monday or whatever it was. And somebody said, the head HR guy was like, we're worried about you shooting up the place. And I was like, what? I mean, I was going to, we had this prayer group every morning that I would go to. So I was going to prayer group every morning. I was, when people would go to the hospital, I'd make sure they got flowers, that kind of stuff. I was bringing donuts to work every day. In my opinion, I was like the most upstanding citizen you could possibly. And so I asked, I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, somebody said you had a gun in your car yesterday. And I was like, first of all, I'm allowed to have guns in my car if I wanted to. I have a concealed weapons permit. There's nothing wrong with that. But second of all, I didn't. Well, I did, but it wasn't like I didn't have it at like work or anything like that. My dad had just met me before I went to this event and given me the gun, and it was on my back seat. It was actually in a case, locked underneath my back seat of my truck. So point is like, it's none of their freaking business, right? So, but they called me into the office, and it had kind of been to the point where it was like the last straw. Kind of like you said, it was like, why would you accuse me? I don't understand this. Like, it was mind blowing to me because of the things that I did around the office, the things I did at work. I was buying people uniforms and stuff that couldn't afford it. This one guy had like 7 kids, and he couldn't afford like work shirts and stuff. So I bought him his shirts and stuff. So I did stuff like this all the time. I'm not trying to paint myself as this perfect guy, but I definitely wasn't no shooter. You know what I mean? So it was when the guy asked me that, it was, to me, it was the most unconscionable thing you could ask me. And I was like, I don't understand. And I stood up in his office, and I was like, if you believe that something like that could have happened, then I can't work here anymore. And I just left, man. And I quit that day. I quit that moment, and I got in my truck, and I cried a little bit, but it wasn't a cry of like, I'm sad, or it wasn't even a cry of anger or anything like, or a cry of happiness. It was a cry as if I was shedding my old self. And I was like, oh, okay, I can go. And the next day, I went, and like you, I started my photography web design business, basically, right? It was mostly photography, and I would knock on doors the next day and immediately started getting just nonstop business. My first year in business was amazing, and it was just like, it showed me that you don't have to be afraid. You could just go and let life happen to you and experience God, and God's going to like reward you with great things. Because like you said, this stuff, the twists and turns of my life led me down to this path. And just like you, I came to a fork in the road. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I need to be doing something that I enjoy doing. So it was already at that point, but that was the tipping point, really. And so I kind of saw then that when you go and live your higher purpose, you when you align with the vibrations of your higher self, like everything, the doors just open left and right. I mean, it's not, and it's funny because, you wrote an amazing book, the Nephilim look like clowns, right? Or the
That's right.
Nephilim, however you want to say it. Stuff like that is that's another door. You wrote that book, and then it's going to open another door to another thing and another thing. And then the next thing you know, you're going on these bigger shows and you're promoting your book, and you're spending time with your family, you're enjoying life more. And you're right, dude. It's like, how could I have not lived this life before? It's like, it makes so much sense. And then I try to tell family members. I just had this conversation with my older brother the other day, and I was like, I don't know how to explain it, but when you let go and let God just take control, and when you do God's will, and you live your higher purpose, money finds a way to come into your bank account every single time. Dude, I mean, I've been down to 50 cents in my account. I've said this before on the show. And then the next day, like, I don't worry. I'm like, yeah, no worries. The next day, 2,000 appear in my account. And this is how it's been for like 7 years now since I left that company. And that's how I live my life with everything. Now I just go, yeah, why not? Why not go on the confessionals? Why not go on Tinfoil Hat? Why not, go on Nephilim Death Squad or whoever? Why not go to this event or that event? Because it's just going to open another door. And if you keep saying yes, and it keeps opening more and more doors for you, it's amazing what happens, man. But
absolutely, no, I agree. It's been the same. I think there's like an adage in the Bible, and it's like, to he who has everything, more will be given, more will be given. And to he who has nothing, more will be taken away as well. It's kind of like, and I'm not saying that's something like God necessarily applying judgment to people or being horrible to people who have nothing. It's more like a rule of the nature of reality that applies whether God's doing it or not. This is just how things seem to go. Like you said, the more you kind of open those doors, as you describe it, and say yes to things and gain more, it seems to open up more opportunity and more, and it just gets exponentially higher, But it's also in the other way as well, and I suppose this is a harsh lesson we should all be prepared for, as not to humble ourselves, and not get too prideful. Sure. But if you make mistakes or slack and something gets taken away from you, you're closing doors, and then you have less options, and then you can very quickly spiral down back to nothing again. So it's one of those, it's a balance you have to find, and it's a discipline, And I think having kind of like these experiences, like you said, being messed around, beaten down, through life, and having and learning these lessons is kind of something we kind of all have to go through first, so we do handle it more appropriately when we get in these positions given to us by God, where we are doing His will, in a sense. Like I said, giving it over to Him, trusting each day that He will provide, type of thing. And I've found it's He does provide. As long as you don't get too proud of yourself, too haughty about the situation, And it's kind of, it's odd that you mentioned, you just randomly get £2,000 in your account, just, and it just happens just when you need it. And it's like, and it's not like the money that's going to make you rich and you can just put it away somewhere and go spend it on a holiday. It's more like something happened, your car breaks down, you get this $700 bill, you know what I mean? Because it needs a brand new engine pistons replacing or something like that. And the whole thing has to get taken apart, the labor man hours or something, because it's misfiring. I don't know. So this is something that happened to me not long ago, I had to get a full service on mine because it was 3 years behind as well, and I'm about to do a big journey to go on holiday. So I got like a £300 bill. But that very morning, some anonymous person had donated me £500. And it's kind of like,
doesn't make any sense.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
Like the timing of it. And, and they were saying, oh, thanks, it's because of the book and everything. They appreciate the work I'm doing, They just bought a book, signed copy for the daughter and things like that. But it's kind of the timing. It's the timing that gets me, not the money itself, And again, that money didn't like make me rich. It just paid for this thing that suddenly came upon me out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? So I can keep living a comfortable life, not a life of exuberance necessarily. I think a lot of people get confused. They think like YouTube money's like, it makes you like dirty, filthy rich or something like that. And we're all in it for the money sometimes, because you have like maybe a few thousand subscribers or something. But it's, when you're in the conspiracy game, you are not making a lot of money doing this. I'm not saying you make nothing, but it's kind of, you're not like hitting the numbers these other YouTubers are making who are on the front page of YouTube. You're like, nowhere near, because every other video gets demonetized. Like, all the time. Videos you don't even remember making get demonetized months after the fact of being posted, so you never see that happen either. It's kind of, your, like, money per hour limit is so much lower than the average. So per 1,000 views, you get, like, a set number. Like, most, like, YouTubers are making, like, $10 every 1,000 views or something. I think I'm making, like, 3. And it's because no advertiser wants to touch your topic, your subject matter.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So you're not lucrative in it. So it's kind of, it's a different game for us, a completely different game. And we're reliant on people just liking what we do and supporting us. And I think in a way that's something that God's doing. You know, he's using the body of Christ and the body of believers and people who are into this to build a community that supports each other. And things are happening behind the scenes we just don't understand, you know. And I think you can feel it. And again, it's I'm not saying money's the be all end all of everything, but in this world, unfortunately, it's what you need to survive. And God will provide. Now, give each day to Him and just do what you're supposed to be doing in a way. And it's an encouraging message, because I made a video, and not long after I started everything, saying, you know, you can quit if you want. You know, this job people hate, because we're lucky. I'm not naive to how lucky we truly are to be doing what we're doing and enjoy it, you know, and have this freedom. Some people, unfortunately, maybe not be able to just quit, because you, like I said, you had this skill. You could do photography, you know, and that's something you acquired in the past, which helped you quit and then set something up quickly. You know, not everybody did invest some time earlier on in their life to developing such a skill, whatever that is, you know, some creative outlet. And I think the creatives were the lucky ones, because we have this platform today and these resources and audiences that we can work with. You know, and not everybody can just quit the job, unfortunately, as well. So I don't know. It's actually there's a lot to think about in this dynamic, but I encourage anybody, you know, if you want to leave your horrible, soul-crushing workplace and you have a dream, go and live the dream. Go and do it. Give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? You fail, and then go back to working again. What's the worst that can happen realistically? You know what I mean? I mean, failure's not even the end. Just get back up and try again.
Yeah, I mean, we're already like barely getting by anyways with our 9-to-5 jobs. You know, we're barely able to afford groceries. It's already a shitty, crappy existence anyways, right? Why not just live your higher purpose, whatever that is?
Absolutely.
And for some people, it's easier when you got a supportive spouse or whatever the case is. I get it. Or if you're creative type. Mm-hmm. But there's still a fear there. I mean, you and I both mentioned we both had kids on the way, and that's a terrifying feeling that, I'm not going to, as a man, I'm not going to be able to provide. I'm not going to be able to take care of my family and do, you know, what are we going to do? And that's a terrifying feeling. But if you can move past that if you could just jump off the cliff and throw your parachute open, sometimes it's not going to open, but, you know, go back up and try to jump off again. Not literal. I'm not telling you to literally jump off a cliff, but figuratively. It helps.
You know, it helps to save a little bit first, I would say.
Sure.
You know, you've got to spend money to make money type of situation. You have to invest in yourself, and it's faith. It's a leap of faith thing. It's also not, you know, trust that God has a plan for you and believe in yourself. As cheesy as it sounds, you know, it really is cheesy, but it's these old like quotes are they have something to them. You know, these cheesy quotes. There's a reason why they're like stereotypes, because they're pretty true most of the time. Like it really is a case. But the book, you know, and the Nephilim Look Like Clowns, that really was, because I had started the series before I had to quit YouTube. I started in 2016, and from 2016 to 2018, I produced 17 episodes dedicated to just beginning the idea and finding the initial evidences off my hunch. I had a hunch originally, and I kind of rolled with it, and evidences kept piling up. And I had 17 episodes when I stopped, and there was a 5-year gap. And I'm lucky that in those 5 years there was silence, you know, on the subject. And then a channel called Conspiracy R Us made a video in like 2020 or something like that, or maybe 4 years later. And it was like, I used to watch this channel years ago, and he's gone now. I don't know where he is, but you can still find like the channel, but there's no videos anymore. But he made these videos specifically about clowns and Nephilim, you know, and he basically just goes on to reiterate all my work in this video, and it blew up. And people were like, what? Like, what on earth is this, you know? And I was like, oh, thanks for, I didn't realize anyone cared. You know what I mean? And he actually inspired me, because by that point, the heat had died down. You know, no one at work was really talking about me or my YouTube channel anymore. It was old news, you know, so I released the series again. And because I just hid all the videos. I didn't delete the videos. I just hid them so no one could find them anymore. They were all unlisted. So I made the playlist visible again, just the playlist. And it started to get these views again. And I was like, oh, that's great. You know, it's great. So I think I was like one of those things. It's kind of like my calling beckoning back to me. You know, like, come back to YouTube, Paul. Just come back and you have unfinished work. You know, you've got this series that ended on a cliffhanger. Come back and finish it off. And in 2020, at the end of 2021, was it? What are we on now? 24? No, it was the end of 20. I can't remember now. 2022, I think it was the end of. So a year later, like 2 years later after this, I quit my job, obviously, blah, 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 started the company, and just started making videos again. I did like a comeback live and everything, and just picked up where I left off with the series. I'll stick to what I know, you know, and more evidences were coming apparent, because we'd just gone through the whole clown world phenomena, you know what I mean, through 2016 onwards, where this meme was going around that the whole world is just turning into a giant circus with like literal clowns running around everywhere, you know, claiming to be a different gender than they actually are, and all sorts of things happening. You know, it was just like madness, pure madness. And even the general sense which you got through the meme culture was that we are living in a clown world. So I had a lot of material to kind of sink my teeth into, you know, and and by that point, like I said, I calmed down a bit, and the series just kept going. And since then, what was that? I was on 17 episodes when I picked it back up. I'm on like 44 now, and the quality got better. You know what I mean? And everything about the series was picking up rapidly. Videos were going viral. And I started to think to myself, like, I need to make like a film or something, or a book. You know, I need to make like a high production quality something to kind of summarize all of this work that is spread out through many examples of episodes that are each like 20 to 30 minutes long each, you know. And I thought, I settled on a book in the end. I was like, I'll do a book. And it took me a year to write the thing. And I started to GoFundMe. I was like, if anyone wants to help support the book, because there are going to be costs. I'm going to have to buy books, first of all, for the resources, for the references. I'm going to have to obviously get a proofreading and all these type of things. And there's just costs that come with generally writing a book. And also, I need to support my family. Writing a book takes time. So if anyone wants to help, here's a GoFundMe. And I said enough. I said, if you donate £100 or more, when the project's fully finished, I'll give you a signed copy of the book. Just a bit of an incentive. And people just rolling in with these donations for the signed copy. I was like, this is unbelievable. In the end of it, I got up to like 88 people wanted signed copies alone. And then there was the rest of people who were just supporting in general. And I'm like, people want this. You know, I was like overwhelmed with the support, you know. But that was great, because I had so much time to write the book, and I had this income now to support my family during that time, as well as all the costs covered. I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And this is just half of the book. Like, I'm 300 pages into this thing. I had 20 chapters written by like April this year, and I still have another 17 planned. But I'm like, I have a book here. Like, I've succinctly explained the history of the Nephilim from a Christian contrarian viewpoint, the origin of the clown costume, the use of sacred clowning, and the psychedelic experience, all kind of summarized here in preparation for what's to come next in the second book, you know, which is all about the cultures who dress this way to channel demons, found all over the earth in many cultures, in tribal traditions, and then going into the modern movies, music, fashion industry, all those type of things, and the clown murderers, all the modern stuff, you know. So I'm leaving that for book 2, but I've since publishing this book, I've sold like 1,600 copies in 2 months. It's just blown up, and I don't even care about clowns. This is the weird thing, and they're talking about how God kind of uses you to do stuff. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I didn't think I'd be the guy to write a book about clowns. I've never once in my life cared about clowns. I've never had posters of the Joker on my wall. I've never been a juggalo or anything, you know what I mean? I've never been down to clown. I'm just not that type of guy, you know what I mean? I honestly don't care. Like, I'm not interested. But the work, the spiritual warfare aspect of demonology is where I am fascinated through my conspiracy research, you know. And I'm finding that the clown is literally an invention of secret societies modeled after these other cultures who dress this way to channel demons. And it's kind of like the evidence is getting really overwhelming now. And like I can trace the history back to the creation of the costume and everything. I can find where they got their examples from, how they modeled it after the demons of India. It's kind of, this is just getting ridiculous. Even I could see this is just ridiculous. Like, so I've just compiled information that was out there for people already. It's been there for a long time, you know, and it's kind of that which has been seen cannot be unseen situation. It's an occult hidden symbol that we've just now recognized, and you'll see it everywhere. It's been everywhere. It's been in all the films for years. It's kind of, they've been laughing at us, literally, you know what I mean, with the symbol for so long. And it does really feel like, you know, I suppose, again, this is an odd podcast because usually I just talk about what the theory is, but I'm getting retrospective about the journey of talking about the theory with you instead. But it's kind of, it really
probably refreshing because you don't have to like go verbatim about what they are.
Yeah, well, if people want to do that, I mean, I've done like 50 to 60 podcasts now going over this over and over again, the details, and there's like, I've got the book and I've got all these other things, so it's not hidden. If you want to go find out what the research is, go and look, because I can't do it justice in like a 2-hour podcast. We're talking like 8 years worth of work spanning over hundreds of hours of videos and like a 300-page, probably ending up going to be 600 pages worth of research and documents. You know, this is if you want to understand spiritual warfare, I've kind of summarized it all for you, you know, and the tactics kind of used against us that would go unnoticed, like costumes of clowns and their real purpose, you know, and it's odd, but it does feel like this is kind of information that God wanted to be revealed. I don't like talking like that. I'm not like a prophet or something. I don't want to think, oh, I'm so special. God chose me to tell you. It's not like that. It's kind of like, it just happened. And then in retrospect, I look back on it all and it's like, how did this happen? And you look at all the events that kind of led up to it. And it's kind of like, I had no control over any of that. Like I was just like a crisp packet in the wind, just being blown around in any direction that was necessary at the time to end up where I needed to be, you know. It's kind of like, it feels like God did this in some way. You know, this is all glory to him at the end. And I guess I just listened and said, okay, fine, you know, use me, I guess. Like, you know, whatever. Like, I'm giving it to you. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I only know through a kind of vindicator that it was the right, because I'm talking, who wants to be known as the guy talking about demons and clowns, talk about like blacklisting yourself forever and it's being taken seriously. But when people actually do read the research, it's kind of like they realize this isn't a joke, this guy's not having a laugh, I'm not a troll, you know, like this is deadly serious stuff. And like the things, I get messages from people telling me like, you've revived my faith, like this has opened my eyes to many things that have happened in my own life, and they finally understand spiritual warfare in a way that was never clearly explained to them, you know. And it's kind of, that's the point of the book. The clown is just the way to get there. So for some reason, this generation needs the clown as like a hook to get them interested in learning about biblical history. And if that's what they need, and that's what God used, then that's what happened, you know. And in a world where there's a new It film coming out every other year and a second Joker movie.
Joker.
Coming out
yesterday.
And then you're getting like the second episode has just come out of the Digital Circus thing on YouTube. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this world is obsessed with clowns currently. It's the forefront of symbolism that's everywhere. And it's not by accident, by the way. I explained this in a video, episode 43. You know, like the last 10 years alone, they've been pushing this on us. The clown in media, and they want you dressing that way. They're trying to make idols out of these images for people to emulate, you know. And if it seems like God has just worked it against them through this research in some way, and now it's like while people are obsessed with clowns, they're going to inevitably find this book, and then they're just going to end up finding out what the truth about it is and come to Christ, you know, which is fantastic. And I it's kind of like, though I wrote the book, I don't feel like I did much. You know what I mean? Like, in a way, it's a weird horror. Maybe it's just the curse of being a writer. You're never happy with anything. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it was all, I don't want to say channeled, not channeled, because I thought it and put it together and I did the work, but it's kind of, now it's done. It feels like a dream. I'm kind of forgetting, you know what I mean? And I've got more work to do. I'm taking a little break, and then I'm going to get back into finishing off the second book, which will be out next year, hopefully. But now this is out, and I'm seeing the reaction. It's surreal. It's a real surreal feeling. That's what, yeah.
Dude, I totally understand. Let me reset real quick. This is Paul Stobbs. Stobbs, right? I got that last name right.
Sounds
Stobbs,
good.
right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Paul Stobbs. He wrote a book called "The Nephilim Look Like Clowns." He's also the host of the Understanding Conspiracy YouTube channel. Dude, I first saw you on the Tinfoil Hat. I can't remember which episode it was, but whenever the reason I watch shows like Tinfoil Hat or The Confessionals or whatever was specifically because of guys like you and JT and whoever else, because everybody has a little piece of the puzzle that they can provide that helps connect everything. And whenever I heard what you had to say about the Nephilim looking like clowns on there, I was like, oh, some of this stuff like ties into what I talk a lot about the 33rd parallel, and just like you, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about physics and energy and grid lines and all this other stuff, man. But somehow this information come to me, through intuition or whatever you call it. But downloads from the Akashic record or whatever you want to call it, messages from God, whatever you want to call it. But for me, man, it just like you, I kind of landed in this, and I was like, where do I go with this? And so like my little brother and I we're making a documentary about the 33rd parallel now, and I'll probably end up writing a book about it because it all makes sense. It all connects, dude. Like, for example, like I see that. Let me ask this. Let me reset real quick again. Do you see the Anunnaki? I mean the Nephilim or the fallen angels as like the Anunnaki, the Greek gods, the Atlanteans? Those, like, are they all the same body, like entity? I don't know how to describe that, but
well, yes and no. So I take the Book of Enoch's version of events to be pretty much close to the truth, and the Book of Giants and many extra biblical canonical texts. But basically, Genesis 6 explains it quite clearly. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, okay, and bore offspring, the same men became mighty men, men of renown, okay. So we have gods, or the sons of God, so angels, basically, mixing with the daughters of men to create demigods or giants, and that's Greek mythology, through and through, right. But I think there was Mount Hermon on the 33rd parallel, funnily enough. That's where they descended. That's where they came down, and there was 200. Yeah. There's 200 of them. That's a lot of angels, or shall we say, gods with a little g, not the god, but beings.
The Elohim.
Yeah, the Elohim.
Right,
the
lowercase Elohim.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I think it explains in the Book of Enoch they were divided into factions, each with groups of 10. So that's 20 groups. Okay. Spread out all over the earth, each with a leader over them, but the main leader over all the groups was Samyaza, okay, or Azazel, and there's arguments over whether they're the same being or two separate beings, and there's disputes here and there. But we know there was many groups of Elohim or Watcher class angels who were in rebellion against God, who had made the choice, with mutual imprecations, knowing full well the consequences of their actions, to do this thing. They made a pact to create Nephilim. So Nephilim are the hybrid between an angel and a human. They're not fallen angels, as people often seem to think they are. There's no biblical grounding whatsoever anywhere in any book that says a Nephilim are fallen angels. They're not. Not at all. They are the offspring of fallen angels mixing with humans, whether that be through sex, and it seems to explain it was basically just through sex. Nothing magical about it, really. But people like to argue, well, angels don't take wives, it says. It says, no, they shouldn't. Doesn't mean they can't. They shouldn't take wives. You know what I mean? They're not supposed to. But that's why it wouldn't be much of a rebellion otherwise, would it? You know what I mean? It's the way I kind of phrase it. But people like to argue, that's impossible. And it's like, nothing, it's not impossible. Why would it be impossible? But it's just silly to say it is impossible. It's like, these things are angels. They can do anything. Like, they're above us in every respect. They're shape-shifting monsters with animalistic forms in heaven who can look as a man if they want to, or they can form as a dragon. And many of them did. The seraphim, for example, are a class of angel, which translates to fiery flying serpents, or the burning of a serpent of some kind, And that's what I think most of the Watchers were. I think the Watchers were given a job by God, and they asked to do it. Can we watch over your creation for you? And God said, go, do it, fine, you know. I think he trusted his closest confidant angels or sons, which were the seraphim who sang closest to God around his throne, holy, holy, holy. Because they had the wings capable of protecting their body from his glory or something, how they explain it, you know. But I think the closest to him are the ones he trusted the most to watch over his creation. I think the majority of the ones who chose to mix with women were seraphim, which is why we have dragon cults all over the earth, obsessed with dragons everywhere, dragon mythology all over the place. And usually those mythologies come with the dragons mixed with the earth and created giants or offspring of some kind. And one of the most famous ones is the Wanginas, or the offspring of the rainbow serpents, who mixed themselves with the dry earth, and humans are made of the dust of the earth, according to Bible, you know. And their offspring are like giant clown-looking monsters with big red afros and white skin, you know, and polka dot bodies. And it said they built civilization, and the humans were taught a lot of things by them, which they learned from the heavenly serpent gods, you know. But that's like the same story kind of spread out all over the earth. And I don't think it's like the same gods repeated all over and over again. I think these factions of 20 were spread out and had their own dominion over each like continent in many factions and areas. And they all had their own pantheons in these places to subvert and take over the one god. Instead, now everyone was worshipping many gods. And I think the gods of India, for example, weren't the same as the pantheon of gods doing the thing in Greece, or the Norse gods doing the thing way up in the north. You know what I mean? They were just a different group of these 20 factions, all doing their own thing in their own geographical location, ruling over people and pretending to be in the place of God, mixing themselves with humans and creating demigods all over the place. And the point was to usurp the right to rule. So they needed, because they were half human, they had a birthright to the earth in a way. It's kind of like a legality. They were trying to play legal loopholes here to have a way to rule over humanity in like a legalistic manner. So you'll find, for example, in Greek mythology, Zeus was always raping women in proper sneaky ways. Like he would transform into something and end up like raping a woman. But one sneaky story is he pretended to be a queen's husband, the king, when the king was away on business. He replaced the king with himself. Okay. And for like 2 weeks, he was sleeping with the king's wife. And when the king returned, he left and the wife was pregnant. Okay. And it's kind of like, that was like a sneaky trick, wasn't it? But the point is, why did he impregnate the queen? Because he needed to birth a legitimate heir to that kingship in that region. And that's basically what most of the Nephilim stories are. They are always going after, like, if not other goddesses and gods or demigods or whatever, they were going after the daughters or the wives of kings. Because they wanted to legitimately birth someone who had the right to rule. And you'll find that's what the Nephilim did. They usurped all the kings, all the kingdoms. They became the rulers of all of humanity just before the flood. And then they were eating people as well. It was a really horrible time to be around. Because it's not only that, like, how do you stand up against a giant? What do? You just bow down or fight. And if you fight, you're probably not going to win. You know, it's kind of, I think it was easy then for people to just be subjugated. And that seems to be what happened. So, yes, they are all the same, of the same kind, is what I'm saying. But no, they aren't just like the same gods, just from a different angle. Do you get what I mean? There were factions of them, each doing their own thing in different regions, I would say.
Well, I asked that because, you know, there's a lot of evidence, like you said, about there was just the deplorable Nephilim had gotten out of control, started mating with like animals and stuff like that, started like just eating humans and things like that. And so that kind of, and you mentioned Mount Hermon being on the 33rd, right? That's exactly part of my discussion, which is just a lot of the stuff I talk about is like, there was an energy grid, or there still is an energy grid on Earth, and it was destroyed at some point intentionally, I think, by God to create the flood, which flooded the Earth, which killed most of the Nephilim, right? So that's kind of like what, like I see the 33rd parallel as this like circuit of the energy grid. And I think that ETs that we see now, the aliens, are the Nephilim that are in the form. They vibrate into our reality through plasma, and they come in, with whatever metamaterials are available in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to rebuild this grid, this energy grid, to give them power back. And I think that we keep blowing up the energy grid to prevent them from taking control again. So I do think that there are good people who are battling these things that we maybe we don't know about, or at least that's my hope. I don't think that there's a lot of terrible people who are. I think that there are obviously people who are worshiping these fallen angels, and you see so with the number 33 everywhere. That's the way they have to show you the number 33 whenever they do something. It's always war that started on the 33rd parallel, or like I heard a politician one time say, we gotta give 33 tanks to Ukraine to fight the war in Russia. And it's like, there's always like 33,000 emails are deleted, and the thing that happened in 2020 started on 3/11. There's always like some sort of.
John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, had 33 victims.
Oh, see,
I'll just throw that out there while we're on topic with the clown stuff. There you go. There's another one for you. But yeah, exactly. They definitely encode their own
sacrifices. Yeah. Right. Sacrifices have to be made on the 33rd, whether it be John F. Kennedy or Jesus or, Marilyn Monroe, for example. Like, there's always these sacrifices. Kobe Bryant was on the 33rd parallel, was, in LA. And so there's always like some homage to the 33rd is kind of what the tie-in is for me. But the energy grid that created the flood, that flooded the world, that killed the Nephilim, that's how it ties in for me. So when I heard you on Tinfoil Hat, I was like, okay, there's another piece of the pie, right? It's like, okay, now it makes sense. Like, what I'm seeing matches up to what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because first of all, just to go back, the flood itself didn't actually wipe out the original Nephilim, although there were Nephilim creatures around, and I'll explain. It says in the book of Enoch that the Watchers who did this, who initially created the OG perfect half and half human angel hybrids, and these things are huge, by the way. They were like the size of like mountains. The originals, it got ridiculous how big these things got. You know what I mean? We're talking like titans of unfathomable proportions, and they look like clowns. They look like half serpent, dragon, human hybrid monster things. Very colourful, big wide mouths, huge bulging eyes, wild, crazy red hair, white skin. They looked insane, and terrifying creatures. Well, it says that the angels, as punishment, had to watch their beloved ones kill each other, like in brutal, horrible, petty squabble, power grab battles. You know what I mean? And the beloved ones would have been the firstborn angels of their kin, these children they created. They had to watch them all die. And then while the angels watched all their children murder each other, which were the Nephilim, then they were bound in chains till the end. Till Apollyon was released from the pit, I believe, in Revelation, or these type of things. But they were basically bound in chains as punishment after having to watch their children kill each other. But it also explains in the book of Jasher that the Nephilim also mixed with human women and created the Eliu. And then they created their own offspring, which were called the Elio, and then the Nephil. And it was like lesser versions of Nephilim-esque creatures who were like a quarter angel, and then an 8th angel, and then a 16th angel. They were like getting more watered down with each passing generation as they kept mixing with human women and creating these more hybridized creatures. They were still around. I don't think it mentions anything about them getting killed in the original thing. And I think that's where they start to get less clownish and more humanized. And more like, then you get the elongated skull giants instead, sure. You know what I mean? Or the hairy ones and things like this. And it started to get a bit weird, Closer to human, less serpent type stuff, like as they got more watered down. And eventually, they probably were indistinguishable from human the further down you go, because it's just kind of, it just gets less and less. And this is where you get the divine right to rule belief from, like, kingships. They have angel blood in them somewhere. But they look pretty human to me. Just like horrible, deformed, inbred humans, you know what I mean, who have tried to keep their blood pure and all this type of stuff. But where do you think that comes from? It goes way back to this initial incursion, And I believe when the flood came, at that point, you had these creatures knocking about, these Elio and the Nephil, but you also had humans who were mixing themselves with animals. And it's called the mixing of kinds. And it explains this time where there was like a 200-year period just before the flood, after the giants were killed, where humans took it upon themselves, with help from the giants that were still around, the children of the giants with their knowledge, and also the help of the angels who never originally mixed themselves with humans. They were still around and in rebellion as well. So they decided to teach mankind, mess yourselves up. We're not going to birth creatures through you anymore, but we're going to teach you how to do it to yourself. And that's I think genetic engineering began. And that's where these chimerid monsters started to appear. Like animals that have like the head of an eagle and the snake of a tail of a snake and the claws of a lion, like you know what I mean, like a griffin, for example, or centaurs, manitors, and all these type of things, and chimerid hybrids, hydras with many like heads, and like just creatures and monsters just coming up all over the place that are like mashed together animals that shouldn't exist, and also people mixing themselves with humans. So then you get dogmen. Lizard men, dogmen, werewolves is the same thing, isn't it? You get Mothman. Name a cryptid. They were likely created during this period just before the flood. I mean, if you want to survive a coming flood, it'd be ideal to have some gills. So, mermaid. Let's create sirens. Let's hybridize ourselves with fish. And there's all sorts of stories of after the flood of like fish gods coming out of the sea, the Phoenician Dogon fish tribes, and all these, you know what I mean, with a mitre hat, shit like a fish. It's like, where do you think all that came from? It's because there was the re-emergence after the flood and the re-establishing of the pre-flood religion, ideologies, and god worship of the Nephilim, but through hybridized means instead. So it's kind of like humans Nephilimified themselves. It's a phrase I've kind of coined. They became like Nephilim. They weren't really Nephilim because they weren't half angel, but they were like X-Men, mutants. You know what I mean? They'd changed themselves. And there's a question you have to ask there. Does changing yourself like that give you the same fate as the Nephilim? Because we're told when the Nephilim die, the spirits trapped on Earth and they become demons. That's basically what we're told through scripture. And that's where these spirits come from. That's where demons come from. They are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. But do humans who Nephilimify themselves suffer the same fate? Are they also stuck on Earth, doomed to forever be stuck here as demons, just like the Nephilim? Like, we have to ask these questions. We don't know. Are all demons simply just Nephilim? Or are they also these people who have changed themselves? And that asks another question. What's the link between the physical and the spiritual in that respect? Does making physical changes to your temple of God have such profound spiritual ramifications? Are you supposed to say pure like Noah in order to have your inheritance, which is access to heaven and the new heaven and earth in the end? It's kind of, and is to change yourself genetically, giving that up. Truly selling your soul, literally, in a sense. These questions have been arising. I don't have answers definitively for this one, but you've got to wonder. You do have to wonder. And this will create a hierarchy in the spirit realm. You got these lesser humans on the bottom, these monstrous hybrid creatures, you know what I mean? And then above them, you'll have the Nephilim, you know what I mean, who are clown-looking jester things that people see on DMT, I guess. And then above them, they would answer to the angels. You know what I mean? Who can travel between realms at ease, who aren't in chains, weren't bound because they didn't mix with humans. And then above all of them, I guess you have the devil or Lucifer or whatever the leader is, whatever you want to say. It's a mess, and the earth is just infested with these things, spiritually speaking. Like, the earth is corrupted because it's just full of demons in the spirit realm, and people are messing with things they don't understand today, and they don't understand that there's this malevolent force just behind a hidden veil we can't perceive. And it's said, you're talking about this energy grid, and it was broken to make the flood happen, probably by God on purpose, and it limited things for humanity. I think that ether breaking energy field probably made people naturally perceive the spirit realm normally with their own eyes open all the time. There probably wasn't any distinction between that psychedelic DMT realm and the physical world for our perceptions originally. But it's like, from what I'm told, after the flood, rainbows existed. They didn't exist before. And God said, I give this rainbow to Noah as like a covenant that I won't flood the earth again. Like a promise, I'm not going to do it again. The next judgment comes by fire, we're told. But it's like, so rainbows just didn't exist before the flood? Like, what does that mean? And people equate it to, well, now there's water. There wasn't water before the flood. And now we have oceans afterwards, and it's changed a lot. So now light refracts and creates the thing. And it's kind of like, well, no, not really. I don't think that's not enough. I think it means something else. I think, what do we perceive now? We perceive that spectrum of light, the prism spectrum. We perceive specifically the rainbow colors only. We don't see beyond that very narrow band of what's actually available there, what's happening, And I think before that energy grid collapse, as you would describe it, or before the flood, humanity did perceive all spectrums. They did see into the spirit realm as well as the physical at the same time. They saw way beyond our capabilities of what we see today. Like I say, we only see this narrow red, green, yellow, blue, like spectrum. We don't see really beyond the rainbow spectrum anymore. And I think that was a mercy. So we don't have to deal with the spirits that are now trapped on the other side. Like, because if we could see all the time, the Nephilim would still be here, technically. We'd be seeing them all the time. We'd be interacting with them still all the time, and we'd be corrupted again. So to stop that corruption from happening again, I think the prism was broken, the field was broken, our perceptions were limited, we were put into a lesser state, so we can't interact with the demons that now infest this bloody place. And, from there, we've tried to rebuild humanity as the only dominant predator on the earth since then, because prior to that, we weren't. These things were walking around eating us, you know what I mean? We were literally like prey. And that's not what God intended. He didn't create his creation to live in fear of being eaten by giants. That was not the intention, So people argue, it's like, I need to open my third eye and access these realms again and regain my full consciousness capacity. It's kind of like, maybe God doesn't want you doing that for a reason.
It's the forbidden fruit. I talk about it all the time, dude. It's Absolutely. The forbidden fruit. It really is. The knowledge of good and evil. That's what that is to me. Is that when you do DMT or mushrooms or any of this stuff, and that's why I've never done it, is because I'm afraid of what that, what could come of that, right? Well, because we can't see it for a reason. I mean, just like you said.
Yeah, well, that's my background. I came from the psychedelic community before I was saved.
Oh, really?
I was doing those things, looking for those answers, not knowing anything about Christ or Jesus at this point, or really religion from that angle. I was a very anti-Christ. I was like, nah, it can't be the truth. What does a guy being nailed to a piece of wood have to do with me? How's that going to save me? And what do I even need saving from? It was that kind of thing. I didn't know. I didn't have any context to understand any of it. It didn't make any sense to me. So I was looking for spiritual answers through like Eastern mysticisms, Buddhism, Taoism, psychedelic exploration, consciousness exploration, all that type of stuff. Jungian archetypal, psychological stuff, as well as looking at all these mysticisms and because I didn't know where to start, but I knew it's like, nah, it's not Christianity. It's definitely not that, So I ended up going to these places and seeing these things, and I ended up taking like DMT, salvia. I was tripping all the time. I was basically high like 24/7 for like 8 years of my life, smoking weed every day. You know what I mean? And then going out on the weekends doing MDMA and other things, and it's kind of. It wasn't a good life. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It almost killed me, in fact, because I was burning myself out, the candle at both ends type of situation, and messing my mind up in the process, probably, I think, thank God, I think it's been restored in some way. But when I came to the end of all of that, I was just a mess, and I had to call on God to save me, and he truly did. My life has been different ever since that time, but I saw a thing or two. I learnt there's a spirit realm. It's right there. You can go and see it in 5 seconds if you just inhale this chemical. You can go there, and it's repeatable, like scientifically repeatable. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you go to the same place each time, and it's the same thing, and it's and entities are there, things are there, like things are happening, but it's still the earth. It's kind of all it is your perception just gets opened up, and then it comes back to its limitation again once it wears off. And that's all any of these drugs do. They don't really take you to a special dimension that's separate from the earth. You're always going to the earth dimension. But each drug has its own flavor of making you experience it. You know what I mean? Because it has effects on the body as well, which cause sluggishness or hyperacuity. It all changes. Like, imagine this. Imagine like you have different mediums of art. You got paints, you got pencil crayons, you've got felt tips, you've got biro, you know what I mean? You've got just normal classic HB pencils, and it's kind of each drug will take you to the same place drawn with that medium. Do you know what I mean? So it looks slightly different because of the medium, but it's the same place being represented. That's how I like to kind of describe what these drugs are doing. People think like, well, the DMT realm isn't the same as the salvia realm. The two different levels of being and dimensions were different. It's not. It's all the same thing. But because of the ethereal nature of it and the interpersonal relationship you have with those realms, it can be perceived differently through different mediums. So it's very odd, bizarre, psychedelic concept, which I'm sure you probably didn't grasp at all, because it's kind of, you have to do it to understand it. And that's the problem with these drugs. You can't really convey what's happening, but it proved to me there's a spirit realm. And then it made me have to start taking seriously the biblical perspective that kind of had some answers on all of this. Because what are these entities and where do they come from? Where do they come from? Like, I'm not buying this idea that they're just a reflection of my subconscious shadow trying to teach me something about myself that I need to change about me to become a better person or something, which is what a lot of Jungian archetypical thinkers believe. It's like they're just reflections of yourself, you know. It's you speaking to you to help you teach yourself something that you need to unlock about your potential. It's kind of like what a lot of bollocks, like a lot of nonsense. These things are quite clearly separate entities from me, messing with us. Like they've got agendas, they've got personalities and feelings, and I didn't make this up in my head. And it's like, no, and everybody wouldn't be seeing the same thing, you know. Like, and not only that, they keep lying about what they are to people. They all have a different story. Like, oh, well, I'm an ascended master from who's made it to the 9th dimension, or oh, well, you know, I'm an intergalactical spacefarer from the Pleiades constellation, or I don't know what. Name some nonsense. I'm a light worker angel from the 9th heaven who's come down to teach you. I'm your spirit guide, or they all have their own story that the person they're coming to will believe. Do you know what I mean? Whatever works for them is what they'll tell you, which tells me they're deceivers, they're liars.
Of course.
They're not being honest, you know. And then when you read the biblical perspective and learn the history of the Nephilim and what happened on Mount Hermon, you know, and all these type of things, you can very quickly learn there's a reason these things are here. They are there for there's a history for this. Like, you can go and find out why they're there and what they are, what they really are. You know, it's not even like hidden really. And every culture has their own name for them or their own stylized way of trying to explain them. Many cultures have based their entire civilization off the lie they were told while these things were ruling, like the Anunnaki lie of Zachariah Sitchin's style, the 13th planet stuff, you know? Like, yeah, those people in Sumer probably did believe what the Anunnaki told them about where they come from. Doesn't mean they were telling the truth then either. The people didn't know any different. It's like, how are you gonna, like, how are you gonna argue with them? The giants, you know what I mean? What are you supposed to do? So you believe what they tell you, you know what I mean? Because you're in awe by it. And I think a lot of those lies have echoed down into the day. But when you find out the common story, Mount Hermon, Watcher Angels, mixing with humans with an agenda to purposefully corrupt humanity and lie along the way and invent false religions along the way, you know, it all kind of clicks into place. And it really is, the Bible had it right all this time. And I can't, it blew my mind. But like I said, the psychedelic community, they're the ones I'm trying to reach. It's kind of like, I've been there. I've had those viewpoints you have. I understand them. You know what I mean? You think Jesus is just a representation of the sun, do you? It's kind of like, what a load of nonsense. Actually look into it. None of the zeitgeist claims hold any water when you actually realistically look into them. Like, they say, like, oh, like a Mithra and Jesus and Apollo and Dionysus, they're all just the same thing, you know what I mean? They all had the same events, and it's kind of like they claim like they all were born of a virgin, they all had like 12 apostles and all this type of thing. It's kind of like, well, actually, no, they didn't. When you really go and look into it, that film just lied to you, just made stuff up. It just outright made stuff up that is not even close to true whatsoever. Like, the differences are vast between Jesus and all these other pagan gods. Not barely any similarities at all, especially not the ones that film claimed. But most people are so ignorant and don't know anything about Jesus or any of these ancient histories, they took it at face value. So the lies perpetuate and continue, you know, even to this day, and I'm trying to reach them and say, look, you're looking for God. That's why you're doing these drugs. You crave some kind of spiritual experience. Okay? You're not going to find the truth or the answers in Eastern mysticism or Jungian psychological archetypical perspectives. It might puff your ego up and make you feel really smart, might make you feel like you're really intelligent and you know better than everybody else. But if you just humble yourself to God and ask him to reveal himself to you, you'll learn the true history of what's really going on. You'll gain some perspective, some real perspective, and you'll realize there's no wisdom in these places or with these entities. It's not really there. It's an illusion. It's smoke and mirrors. And that's what this book really is, and that's why it ends talking about the psychedelic community, my own psychedelic experiences, and the DMT jesters that people see. Like, why do you think they look like that? And I've explained clearly, like, this is why they look like jesters. Because of their parents. Because of where they come from. Because of what they are. And I think having that context to understand what they're really experiencing, rather than just trying to figure it out and guess, well, it must be a reflection of myself. It's like, I can give you the history to explain exactly why they're there and why they look like that. Do you want to know? And I think it's working. I get messages from people telling me, like, yeah, it's brought them to God and they've quit the drugs. Amen. That's the point. That's what we need to do, because you need to be sober, because we live in a world of deception. And you talk about JT, for example, I assume you've heard about the little season deception and all these type of things. So, if we're living in that time, the devil's prowling around like a roaring lion, seeking whoever he may devour. That means if you play the fool, then you're food for him. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to be an idiot and not wise up and learn the truth about situations and think you can do it all yourself with your own knowledge, you're putty in his hands. You're his food. He's got you. He's got you where he wants. So it's kind of like wise up and humble yourself, basically. Are you tired of the same old conversations? Do you often find yourself struggling to know what to say? Are you over discussing the news, sports ball, or the weather? It's time to put boring discussions behind you by leaving a copy of The Nephilim Look Like Clowns on your coffee table, your toilet, your local library, mother's car, boss's office desk, or that person you really like's bed instead.
What the hell is this?
Oh, that? Why, it's just a book about how the modern costume of a clown is a caricature of ancient giants and modern demons.
Stay away from my children.
This is a conversation you can't wait to have.
My family used to think I was crazy, but thanks to The Nephilim Look Like Clowns, they know I'm crazy.
The Nephilim Looks Like Clowns. It's no laughing matter. I went off a bit there. I'll let you go. So I do.
No, that was. Now I see what you were saying about the light worker thing. That's just the name I had to put on it. By the way, I don't think I'm like some Jesus type figure or whatever.
Oh, I know.
You know what I mean? Like because I do humble myself when it comes to everything, man. Like I don't, and I talk about it a lot on the show, dude. Everything I have in my life, I'm just like, how do I have this? I don't deserve this. And I thank God. I was talking to my neighbor. My light keeps going out. I'm sorry. I don't know why it keeps doing this.
It's okay.
But, I was talking to my neighbor one day and I was like telling her how I grew up in a trailer and, I was just happy to be in this beautiful neighborhood and this nice house. And I said, I get to look at deer in the backyard all the time. And as I wave my hand, this deer walks out. And I was like, God, this just those moments. It was broad daylight that the deer walked out. So it was just those moments that I just thank God. And I go, this is amazing. Like what, that's the gratitude you have to show. Do you think that, and I wanted to ask you about this at least before I'm sure it's getting kind of long here, but, do you think that we are in some sort of a Faustian bargain with the other side? I know that they're ultra terrestrials. I don't call them extraterrestrials really. I just say the word ET. If I have to, I say it because that's the word that people know.
Mm-hmm.
But I know them as ultra terrestrials. They are around us is the best way to put it, in different layers or something of Earth. I don't know how to describe that, but that's how I see it in my mind as well. But I think that we continue to sacrifice humans to them in order for them to leave us alone to a certain degree, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like, go ahead. I'll let you.
Well, it's funny because we were just talking about that on my channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a guy on called Connor from. He has a small YouTube channel called the Cult of Con, and I enjoy listening to him rant because I'm one of the birds of a feather situation. I like to rant and ramble as well, and I appreciate him doing his thing, and I like his style. Yeah. And he did this. His episode got banned. He got taken off by the censors because he mentioned some of the things you're just not supposed to say on YouTube. Sure. But he was on a roll. It was a really good talk, and he was talking about the Nephilim horde, which is like being held back on the earth somewhere. And he was talking about this concept that there are many creatures, which have been driven underground, especially when the millennial reign was established from that perspective, when Jesus came and ruled. And maybe your audience hadn't heard that theory. It's all in broad spectrum to this theory idea that when Christ comes, the Nephilim that were on the earth have to hide for 1,000 years. They can't be. Right. So they literally went underground, like deep underground. And the surface was a party and lovely and perfect with Christ ruling, but they just had to deal with it underground, to do their own thing and create caverns. And he's trying to explain like how like deep underground military bases, that's what these really are. They were built by the Nephilim for the purpose of surviving out the millennial reign, basically. And he said when the millennial reign ends, they kind of pop their heads back up. It's like, can we come out now? Is it time? And he was saying there's like a conspiracy here for like national parks. These are the territories of the Nephilim.
100%.
These are the territories. And it's like when one gets curious and ventures to the edge of their territory, this is where like contact happens.
Yep.
And like close encounters, with the other, with Bigfoot or whatever, whatever it is. And
I grew up in the National Forest on the 33rd parallel.
And you got like, the missing 411, is what you call it in America. You got these like missing people everywhere and like kids going missing and everything. It's kind of like, he was saying like, it's like we're feeding them. Us. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, that's maybe what's happening. And again, it keeps them in their territory and back and assuages them, while this thing's going on. But there will come a time where they're like, right, go. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're free to go now and just feed. Go eat humans like you used to. Tale as old as time itself, And he's saying it's not just like the Nephilim that are there. It's also the hybridized humans, the dogmen, the Silocephaly, you know what I mean? The Mothmen or whatever, the lizard people, or whatever you want to say, the mermaids in the marine kingdom, as people call it, or the sirens, you know what I mean? You've got what are they called? The harpies come out, the flying women with wings and all these type of things. But it's kind of like they're literally hiding in these Jurassic Park style places, you know what I mean? Like, in a way. And it's kind of, that's the Nephilim horde, and that is both underground and maybe some slightly on the surface now in this time, but like kept back and held back and assuaged and being fed us, people. And there's films that kind of hint at that idea, isn't there? I think it's The Descent is about pale-skinned cannibalistic creatures underground. You get these spelunkers going down into caves that stumble into this horrible world. Midnight Meat Train, that really cheesy, gory film, is about this, at the end of the night, the last train, whoever's on there gets butchered by this guy, this murderer. And you find out he's actually a good guy who has to kill these people and bag them up and put them on meat hooks to feed the lizard men who come out into these guys. Where the train goes is like a tunnel entrance to this cave, when the lizard people come out and feed on the bodies, and it keeps them back. You know what I mean? It stops them from coming out. Is it Cabin in the Woods? Is that another one?
That sounds familiar. I don't think I've seen
the
that. The
plot of that film is quite literally these stupid teenagers go to, it's playing the classic serial killer trope. Horny teenagers go on a break and then get killed by serial killer one by one. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But the catch is, it's different every time. Like, every time these kids hire this cabin and go there, they all die. But it's always by like a different killer. And there's many triggers in the place where they can discover something, like an old book that unlocks an ancient curse or something, which releases the lizard demon or something, or like they find like something in the attic and it's like this piece of treasure, and then an incantation. But the whole house is tripped with these like triggers, and they could stumble upon any of them, and it will release a certain monster which will come out and sacrifice all the kids. And it turns out underneath this cabin is like a ultra scientific lab that has bred thousands of different types of chimerid beasts and murderous monsters. And every time the kids come to this cabin, they're being sacrificed to
Sure.
assuage and keep the giants from bursting out of the ground and destroying all of humanity. It's kind of they're kind of telling you in these films that yes, in a way, we're keeping back the horde, you know. And again, if you're interested, go listen to the recent Truth or Therapy session where Connor came on and talked about his theory and idea. But it's based on a lot of my own work as well, where I was explaining there may be a time where the alien invasion released, you know, this ancient. Like,
Sure.
This plan has been going on for like decades in the programming realm. They're trying to prepare us for an alien invasion. It's kind of
Sure,
it's one of the cards, isn't it? They're going to play it at some point. Like, right, release the aliens, and it comes with the release of the horde, which are in these parks and under the sea, probably and underground, and they could just burst out of the ground at any moment. You know, like the locusts in Gears of War, just burst out of the ground at any second. You know what I mean? And just take over the earth. It's kind of. The point is, though, that's going to probably likely happen when New Jerusalem turns up, which is a giant floating city in the sky. And it's kind of when Christ turns up with Mount Zion and New Jerusalem floating in the sky. It's going to look to us, who have been programmed for like 100 years with media, like a giant spaceship, like a mothership. You know, that's come to invade Earth. Independence Day stuff. You know what I mean? Or District 9 stuff, maybe. Like just this random city just appears in the sky. People will panic. And in that initial panic, the evil controllers will release the horde. And then it will look like we're under attack by aliens. Right? But all it was is Christ just appeared. He did nothing. He sent nothing. He didn't release any aliens on us. The people in control did, who underground, like Cabin in the Woods, have these labs where they've created chimerid hybrids and locked them all up. Or, you know, you got the ancient Nephilim or the hybrids in these national parks or whatever, you know, or underground. Just release them all when Christ appears. So everyone will think we're under attack by aliens. And that will then forward the next agenda, which is all humanity comes together as one and goes to fight the common enemy together. And in Revelations 20, that's described as Gog and Magog being gathered from the four corners of the earth to surround the camp of saints. Well, that's basically an alien invasion, you know. And how do you convince the whole Earth to get together? An alien invasion might do that, and that's what Reagan said, isn't it? You know, imagine how quickly our differences would disappear if we were under threat from some outside alien force. You know? And it's kind of, well, yeah, that's the only unifier. Because it's kind of like people don't want to kill people. Really, it's hard to get people to kill other people. You have to go through a lot of training, and even through breaking them down and building them back up. When you put them in the front lines, they don't want to kill that guy in front of them. And often people who do suffer PTSD because it was such a horrible experience that goes against everything ingrained into them. But you put a monster in front of somebody, it's like, let's kill it. Give him my gun. It's that type of situation. No, people have no qualms over killing a monster. You know, so that would be the unifying force for all humanity in a sense. It's kind of, if we can unleash the horde, humanity will galvanize and become one. And that's what Satan wants. A one world government, a one world order, one currency, one language, you know? Everyone united. All religions disappear because we have aliens here now. Everyone was wrong. You know what I mean? Like, now we know the truth. It is evolution, you know? Good aliens might turn up and like, by the way, the good aliens are just the fallen angels. They'll turn up and they'll be like, we're here from the Galactic Federation. We've been watching your planet. You're under attack by the evil Emperor Zurg or something. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, we're, you know, Thanos has turned up, but we're here to teach you and help you ascend to our level so you can fight back. It's the Mark of the Beast stuff. You know what I mean? Just take this chip, do this upgrade to your body, and you can be like us and ascend into the Galactic Federation or something, you know. And humanity by that point will be so beaten down, eaten up by Nephilim, ready for anything to help them from the horrors that have come upon them. And they'll take that offer from the good aliens, you know, whatever it is. But all of this is just like some cheesy Hollywood plot, isn't it? Because it is all, because it's all scripted. The whole thing is just a huge, convoluted, long con, like, plan in the making. So when New Jerusalem rocks up and Jesus appears in the sky and it's the end of everything, all of humanity gets deceived and thinks we're under attack by aliens. And the Nephilim horde, I think, is there. I think is waiting. They're just keeping it underground and in these places. And, oh yeah. So to answer your question in a very long way, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, it's there. And we're definitely feeding them. We're definitely feeding them. Yeah.
And it seems like we're giving them people to mate with as well. We're just
Mm.
letting these abductions happen so they can continue their hybrid. Because truthfully, I think that not. I think we are made in God's image, and we are light beings, and we're here in this perfect harmony and spectrum. And they want to these disembodied entities want to be here, and
Mhm.
so they're they're trying to create these hybrids to try to exist in this realm. And
Mhm.
I don't think that they can do that. I
It's
don't
not,
think.
well,
I
they're
mean,
not God, are they? You know,
right?
at the end
No.
of the day,
Right.
how do you get your nefesh, your spirit, into a body? And I think it's a messy process. I don't think it's like, like films make it out like someone can be possessed and now they're fully under the control of the demon and the demon just uses their body for whatever they want type
No,
of
you
thing.
have to let them in.
But even if you do, I don't think the demon can do what the films tell us. Like take over the body and like a meat puppet, you know what I mean? And just have full control. I don't think it works like that. Because when you actually look at like videos coming out of places like Indonesia or Bali or India where they have these demon channeling events where they dress like a demon, put on makeup, a red wig, usually white face, they dress like a clown, and they do these rituals. Well, they do it for the intent of mirroring the spirits, and it kind of creates a channel to the spirit realm when you dress like something in the spirit realm. And then that thing can get in their body. And usually they take a lot of drugs while doing it as well and do a lot of chanting and meditative stuff and get into that theta wave state, But once the demon's in them, it's a mess. They're like jerking around, they're like gurning like they've taken like 3 hits of MDMA way too quick together, you know what I mean? They're like, the demon can't like fully control the person. It's kind of like it's weird. You know what I mean? And it's they can't just like get up and go to work and no one would know. You know what I mean? Like they're in and like they stick the tongue out, they scream. You know what I mean? And they're like a mess. But then while they're in that state, people like give them stuff, and then the person who's got the possession like eats the head off a chicken and drinks the blood because the demon wants the blood. It's feeding the demon because the demon is currently using the vessel's tongue to taste stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, but it's kind of like it has to like squeeze into like, it's like a tight pair of jeans for the demon. It's got to like squeeze in there uncomfortably. And it's like, it doesn't want to, it's hard to be in it. It's not nice for the demon because it's not his body. It doesn't belong to the demon. It's not the but it can do a little bit. It can like slightly use the nose to smell some stuff. It can use the victim's ears to hear some things slightly. It can use the eyes to see stuff. It can vaguely do it, but I don't think it's as cut and dry as I now have a new body and this is mine and I'm going to walk around on the earth now as a demon and no one will know because I'm disguised. I think it's very limited. I think the media would like us to believe it's like that. But I don't think it's that easy. I really don't. From what I've seen, it's really messy. The whole process is. So the demons do want a body they can inhabit that they can call their own. Problem with humans, we're made in the image of God and we're supposed to exist. They're not. So they don't really have a compatible body other than their original bodies that were created. So I think this is where transhumanism comes in. I think they're trying to make robot bodies that they can inhabit instead. And then, like I said, create these chimerid weird flesh suits like alien greys or something. Do you know what I mean? Which are like an amalgam hybrid of other creatures slapped together, which are like temporary crappy vessels that decay really quick. And it's kind of, even then, like I said, they don't have much control for long because they're disembodied spirits who aren't supposed to be here. So I think it's like a curse, yeah.
I hope it doesn't sound blasphemous because I've said it before. I said it on Tony's show on the confessionals. Like one of the things that woke me up to this spirit world initially was I've been to like 4 different churches when I was young, like 12, 15, stuff like that, to my friends and my cousins' churches and things like that, where they get the Holy Spirit. And when you see people have you ever been to one of those kinds of churches?
No.
Where you see people get the Holy Spirit? It's what you're talking about. It is literally when you look at people in their eyes, when they have this Holy Spirit, this so-called Holy Spirit. I don't want to be blasphemous again. It could be, but it doesn't look and feel right to me whenever I see it. They start charging, the preacher starts kind of charging the crowd up, and you can kind of sense it in the air, like something's coming. And then he starts speaking in tongues and everybody's holding up their hand, and they have to hold up their hand to catch the Holy Spirit so the Holy Spirit can come into them. But when they do get this thing, it doesn't look loving. It doesn't look kind. It looks like you said, they're flipping around like fish, they're sweating profusely, and their tongues are hanging out. It's exactly what you described with the dressing like painting your faces like the Nephilim and stuff, right? So it's like
It's the same thing. And
Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm very, very skeptical that that's actually the
Sure.
Holy Spirit coming, because the practice is identical to these pagan cultures who are knowingly channeling demons. Are
Yeah.
these Christians naively and just unknowingly doing the same thing? I don't think ignorance of the spiritual laws makes you immune to spiritual laws. Like, people say, like, well, I dress like a clown to entertain kids, so I don't intend to channel demons, so I'm fine. It's like, I don't think you are. I think if you dress that way, you're playing with fire. You're
Sure.
channeling a demon. You're mirroring something that's in the spiritual realm. That costume has always been for that purpose. Just because you don't intend it to be that way doesn't suddenly stop it from being that way, And I think just because these, good-hearted Christians believe it's the Holy Spirit coming into them doesn't make it so. Like I said, when you find that looks identical to what the Balinese are doing when they channel their ancestor spirits, it's kind of, well, it's the same thing then, isn't it? You're not... I think things have changed. I think when the Holy Spirit comes into somebody, I don't think it's this wild spectacle. When I had my moment of being born again, I had a moment where I felt that change. And I was having a bath, funnily enough. For context, I hadn't had a bath. I'd only had showers for like 10 years. So there'd been this long period of my life where I hadn't been submerged underwater. I don't swim. I didn't go... Well, I can swim, but I don't go swimming. You know what I mean? So it's like, that hadn't happened either, So it's kind of at the end of this long day where I'd kind of broken down and said, all right, God, if you're real, help. Because I don't know what I'm doing, If you're real, fine. Let's show me. Prove it. Let's do this. I'm ready. Nothing else to show me any answers. I've nothing left to give. I'm on the edge of death here, and I'm giving up. You know what I mean? I don't have any meaning or purpose. And I have no answers thanks to all my psychedelic experiences and exploring these things. Please, please, please just help me. It was literally a sincere call for help. And then I ran a bath, got in the bath, relaxed, went under the water, and then boom, I got this feeling in my chest. It was like warm energy of a sort, but sudden. And I panicked. And I felt like I was having a panic attack because it's right here in the solar plexus, chest area, stomach area, you know what I mean? This feeling. And it passed, the fear passed very quickly and I was calm, but I felt this warmness in my core. It's the only way I can explain it, And I think I accidentally baptized myself is basically what happened there. I wasn't intending to do it, but that feels like that's what happened. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure people out there might say that's ridiculous. You have to have witnesses or something. Maybe you don't. Maybe God was my witness. I don't know. He's there, right? Everywhere. Sees us all the time. My intentions were there. I said I'm giving myself to you, and I submerged myself underwater. I think all the prerequisites were there that I'm aware of what baptism by water is. But from that day, I did change, and conviction was in me that was never prior there for things I used to have pleasure in doing, like smoking cannabis or smoking cigarettes or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Whatever my vice. I had many vices. I was a hedonistic fool prior to this. But every time I did them from that day forward, I had this voice, this feeling in me, like a still quiet voice, like, what are you doing? Like a judgment on me, like, you shouldn't be doing this. That was never there before. And that's the Holy Spirit working through somebody. And he works a miracle in people's lives and makes you become a new creation, born again. And I'm not the same person I was prior to 2014. I'm not the same person. Like, I don't recognize the person I was when Facebook keeps sending me cringe posts that I used to post in 2011, saying 10 years today, you posted this, It's kind of like, who the hell is that guy? Like, you know what I mean? It's horrible. Like, seeing the person you used to be in when you were in the world and cared about worldly things and had your eyes and attention on the wrong things, and he makes you a new creation. But the Holy Spirit coming to me didn't make me start babbling in tongues and rolling around on the floor, screaming in agony and or any of that. It was a warm embrace internally. It's the only way I can best explain it. That, yes, was like a shock, but the shock subsided and the change happened from that day. And it wasn't an instant, like, I am now perfect moment. It took like 8 to 10 years since that time to lose all my old vices and let go of the things of the world and do the work I needed to do on myself to get rid of my inner demons and confront them, you know, and it took time. And he does that. He refines you, you know, and he puts you back into the fire and makes you learn things and teach things. It's a process, you know. Like I said, I had to go through the whole almost getting fired thing while I'm about to have a child and encountering evil and being assaulted and all this. You know, I had to go through all these processes to learn stuff, to then get wiser with time and get the wisdom I asked for. I asked for this. I said to God, show me what the truth is. And he did. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I didn't like the truths I was learning. It wasn't nice. Like, it was painful. A thing like burning off the old self is a painful, horrible experience. It takes a long time because I wasn't ready to let go of everything I was holding on to prior. The things that were holding me back. You know, the things of the world that I didn't need. It's not. But then you get these preachers where it's like, you're now healed, everything's done, go and walk. And it's kind of like, well, I don't know, I can't, that's just not the type of Christianity I can relate to.
Yeah, me either.
No, and I'm not putting the people down who are in that world. I mean, one Pentecostal preacher who did all that stuff was Derek Prince, who's not around anymore. I loved his work. His work was instrumental in me learning about the faith in Jesus in the early days. His talks and the preaching he did. And he was a part of that charismatic movement and did those type of things, but it didn't mean he didn't love Christ. But I haven't seen much evidence myself that it's valid or real or isn't a part of the world or the enemy myself. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, is it a salvational issue? Maybe not, but at the same time, I don't think it's, I've seen too much of the other side to see the similarities like you have. It's for me to consciously agree with it, you know, and say it's something I'm going to practice and get involved with. So there's my opinions and thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen the other side, but I have seen the effects when you start understanding that there's this spirit world around you. That's whenever you start having this, again, I've said 1,000 times on the show, I looked up at the sun and I went, light. Everything that light touches is growing, and that's God. You know, it was like, oh, God is light and God is within you. God is, we don't have to channel and speak tongues and do all this other stuff. We can interact with God directly every day when we walk outside, when we pray, when we touch the grass, when we pet a dog, whatever the case is, we're interacting with that love. That's that warmth that you said you felt, right? That's that love frequency that I talk about a lot on this show too, is it's a vibration of, just being a higher version of yourself. And I think when you're at a higher version of yourself, nothing can get to you. And that's what, living in the light is for me, is when you're living in the light, you're walking in fellowship with Christ, that these things can't get to you. I mean, have you ever seen aliens while in this physical realm?
I've had loads of experiences like that. Yeah.
Oh, have you?
I've had demonic experiences, obviously coming out of leaving the DMT stuff behind and leaving the drugs behind. Yeah. I was heavily demonically attacked. I've seen some terrifying things, creatures coming for me that wanted to murder me, and almost probably did, to be honest. I had one experience where I collapsed and went paralyzed in my living room, and then my vision started to go dark from the corner, and I started to go blind, and then I could see this huge, colorful mandala spiral open up in front of me. Kind of like I was going into the DMT realm, and that's what happens when you die. You know what I mean? You release that chemical, and so I think I was dying, and I could feel this horrible, malevolent force in the room with me, and I knew it was trying to kill me. Like, it was one of those situations, and I maybe I was having a brain aneurysm or a stroke or something. I don't know what was going on. I have no idea, but I couldn't move, and this was happening to me. So all I could do is very quietly, almost inaudibly, say, "Jesus, help me." That's all I could do. Yeah. And bam, back in the room, everything stops. I'm sat up, I'm sweating, I'm breathing heavily, but it stopped. It stopped, and that for me was like one of my faith solidifying moments in my early faith. It all happened like 6 months after this event in the bath, It was very, for me, that was like, okay, so it's definitely real. Like, Jesus is real and he's the answer and he can help you when this shit goes down. When this stuff actually happens, call on Jesus. Like, seriously, guys, from my own experience, it works. I can't convince you of that. I can just tell you it worked for me. Like, it really did, you know.
Yeah.
Like, call it just, say I'm lying, I don't care. Try it. If you're ever in that situation, just call on Jesus and see what happens. It will work. Okay, it really will work. But that's one experience. You know, I saw a giant jester myself. I got thrown back into the DMT realm for no reason, like 2 years after quitting the stuff. And I was confronted by a giant jester, and then I was back. And that set me off on this research, you know, and the whole story is there, but it's kind of many things happened, you know, and it felt like, you know, sleep paralysis, being, you know, demonic attacks during sleep was a big thing. I've seen many UFOs and orbs in the sky throughout the years prior and before this as well, you know, and I had one experience when I was in Lincoln.
You've seen them since you've been saved.
I see them all the time. Swimming around in the air, you know, like tadpoles.
Okay.
You know, I see them, and now I'm like,
I don't see shit, dude. I don't understand it. Like I don't want to see anything, believe me. But my theory on it is that when you're living your highest version of yourself, that these things don't interact, or they can't get to you because you're vibrating at such a higher level.
Yes and no. I mean, I think there is a physical aspect to these things, not all spiritual. And I think the physical and the spiritual world, as I try to explain, is pretty much connected. They're the same thing.
Sure.
It's just our perception that's limited. But I think the veil is thin sometimes than it is the others. And the things in the sky that clearly look like stars that are swimming around, you know, I think they're a very physical phenomena. And I just happen to spend a lot of time looking at the night sky, because I used to do night photography and other things. So I've just seen some things. I'm always looking goodbye. I just always have been. So maybe I'm just in a low light pollution place where I'm more available to, you know, it's just by chance. But there was one particular odd experience in, I think it was around 2013-14, when I was seeped in conspiracy UFO research. Hadn't quite found all the truth on the matter yet, you know what I mean? It was quite new. And I saw these orange fire lights in the sky that looked like balls of fire, like flickering interdimensionally in and out of reality or every direction. You know what I mean? They weren't Chinese lanterns. They were something else. It looked like a glitch, you know, like a graphic glitch happening in the sky. But it was only 50 meters in front of me, just above a house. You know, an ordinary house. It was nothing like any. The people inside probably didn't have a clue what was going on. You know, but there was like a clump of like 20 of them, kind of moving across this patch of sky, but more appeared as they disappeared. It was like a continuation of this clump of light, and it's like there's an invisible barrier here, an invisible barrier there, and as some came out of one barrier and disappeared into the next, a flow was just going through this section, and then they just faded away. And I was like, what the hell is that? You know what I mean? And at the time, I froze with fear, because it's like, it goes against everything you think you know about the laws of physics. You know what I mean? It's completely paradigm shifting, impossible stuff. Like, what do you do with that? Especially by this point, I wasn't saved by Christ or anything. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, what do you do with that? You know? So I just froze with fear. I just watched. I didn't think to get my phone out or record it or anything. You don't in those moments when it's that close to you and happening right in front of you. You just, it's fight or flight stuff, and I chose neither. I just froze with fear. You know what I mean? I didn't run away and I didn't run towards it. It's like I short circuited. I stopped functioning. You know what I mean? I was just staring, and then it went away. So it's like I've seen things. You know what I mean? It's kind of but I feel like after I was saved, these spiritual attacks began. Like, they came for me. And I think
they were mad that you didn't live up to your end of the contract. They're mad at you, man.
Exactly that, actually. Yeah. And it's funny you use that language, because I made a video in 2015 about a dream I had where the Hat Man came for me. And I had never heard of the Hat Man before this. Okay, Hat Man is like a shadow person type thing, you know. He's like a leader of shadow, but it's really odd when you actually look into the lore. But I'd never heard of this guy. And I had this dream where I was drinking tea with dead relatives in front of a Victorian garden hedge maze, in front of some like giant wrought iron gates. You know what I mean? There's these Victorian style seats and tables around, and I was drinking tea with all these dead relatives. And at the time, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. It felt perfectly normal. I was in a dream, you know. It was a very vivid, realistic dream. And I got a phone call on like an old Nokia flip phone doing da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. This is way beyond flip phone era, you know what I mean? But that's what I get out. And I answer this phone call, I'm like, hello? And the guy's like, don't think I forgot about our previous conversation. I'm coming for you now. And I'm like, what? And then I remembered in the dream, another dream. And I'm getting all Inception on you here now, but this is genuinely what happened. And I'm thrown back to like a dream I must have had like 5 to 6 years before this event. And I'm in this festival of screaming and mud and bodies just kind of all writhing and dancing to this stupid, massive, unnecessary stage. And there's like multi-layer platforms of wood and all sorts of things. And I'm roving around in it. And then suddenly I'm on the stage in front of millions of people. You know what I mean? And I remember this dream, it floods my mind, and then I come back into this maze garden tea scenario. But this time, all my dead relatives are gone. They're gone. Like, and I'm alone in this park. And just over the horizon, this hat man figure starts walking towards me. And he's like wearing like a big, wide, purple-rimmed hat, big purple trench coat. Like his features are hidden under darkness, but he has these glowing yellow eyes. He's got like a cane as well. It looks like a pimp. I'm not going to lie. It looked like some kind of like mystical pimp. But he had like these multicolored light rays, ribbons flying behind him as well. It was really psychedelically terrifying and strange. But he was coming at me. He was walking towards me menacingly. And I was like, I've got to get out of here. I was terrified. Like, I can't... Fear, I've never felt anything like it. Like, I knew this guy was up to no good. And apparently I owed him something according to the phone call. He's coming to collect. Do you know what I mean? Like, I must have made a deal with him at some point or something in another dream without realizing, some kind of soul contract in hindsight. I don't know, but I just knew I had to leave, you know. So I tried to run through the maze. I got to the other side. I was in a street, and I just ran to the right, I think, and was running down this street, and the road just crumbled away, like peeled away in front of me, and it was just a huge cavernous drop. And it was like this Russian Cyrillic language sign just hanging over the edge, creaking, you know. And then he's right behind me. He's there. I can feel him, you know. And I just scream and wrench myself awake from the dream. And then I'm like sweating. My heart's going. I feel like it's about to explode out of my chest, type of thing. And it's kind of like, what do you do with these experiences? But then later on, now writing the book, it turns out the Hat Man is a huge character in the circus. He's the ringleader, and he's also a representation of Solomon from Freemasonic temples. And I'm not going to ruin it if you read the book, you know what I mean? But it turns out it's all connected, you know, and the Hat Man plays a huge role in spiritual dealings and warfare. And I only found out after that dream he's been seen by millions of people repeatedly in horrible, shocking, terrifying scenarios. And it's like, I've had my own encounter with the guy. It's kind of like, yeah, it's real. Like, we're really up against forces we don't understand, you know. It's kind of, but again, that's after I was saved, and it really is what you think it is. It's kind of like, well, if we can't have you, nobody can. That's how the demons see it when you come to Christ. And while you're still young in your faith, they'll try and kill you before you have a chance to recognize your authority you have in Christ to cast them out. And I think I beat them that day. I said, Jesus, help me, and it worked. And they haven't really done it since. Like, I think it's because it's kind of like, he knows, don't bother. It's kind of like, he's going to call on Jesus. There's no point even trying now. But prior to that point, they would do these little jabs at me and push me over the edge and try to get me, you know what I mean? And I really think it is because when I was taking the drugs, doing all the hedonistic partying lifestyle stuff, they were living through me. I was a good vessel for them. They were vicariously using me to experience stuff. They were influencing me to do these things so they could feel the pleasure through my body. You know, I was a good vessel. The irony is they never revealed themselves to me when I was doing the stuff. It's best I don't know they're there. But as soon as I stopped, they were like, where's our supply? Let's kill him. He's useless to us now. We can't have him, then nobody can. It really feels like that's what happened. It's all like a hindsight, looking back type of thing, but it all adds up. in spiritually
Yeah.
speaking. That seems to be what happened. Yeah.
There were, when I almost caught the Holy Spirit, that's how I always describe it. I held my hand up one day because the preacher called me and my friend up there, and I pulled back because as my body started to vibrate, like it started to kind of shake me. I was like, oh man, even my friend, one of my close friends that it was his church. He had never interacted with that stuff, but it was pretty clear that what the symbol of us holding our hand up was inviting these energies into our bodies.
Mhm.
And I quickly shut it off. But I actually think that I'm a pretty, I would say I'm a pretty strong-willed guy. Like you can't shake me. There's not a lot you could do to shake me, right? It's like show me whatever you need to show me. Tell me about whatever contract, whatever. Send your hat guy, whatever the fuck you want to send. I'm not trying to be a tough guy, but like I know that I'm protected by Christ. And so like I think that's what I was trying to say a while ago about like when you are in fellowship with Christ, like it, and I know my language probably doesn't help my case at all, but that's just how I talk, man. But when I'm with Christ, man, it just feels like there's nothing that can get to you. And I think these things know that, and they will try to do things like, I think I heard it described on Tony's show before, that it's like imagine the upside down and it's dark, and all of a sudden you see this bright light, and then all these dark things just keep running at this bright light. I think that's what it is, but they just bounce off of it, right? It's like a force field, a bubble around you that these things can't get to you. So you have to be on guard, because I had this lady, I met this lady, but before I even started doing a podcast, I had the idea of doing a podcast. I met her through another friend, and she is a psychic medium, allegedly, right? And I was kind of excited. I was like, oh, this is going to be a good conversation, because, man, I get to talk to somebody who can talk to the other side somehow, whatever. But then I went home and I talked to my wife about it, and I was telling her, and she's like, yeah, don't talk to that lady. And I was like, why? And then she quoted all the scripture in the Bible that says, don't talk to mediums, don't, do this, that, and other. And she reminded me that that the devil will pass himself off as an angel of light. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier about some of that, like I've heard stories before about when these psychic mediums talk to the other side, and let's just say they're sitting there with you, and they're like, Paul, your grandma's here. And she said, do you remember that blueberry pie that you liked a long time ago? Well, of course they know that, because they've watched you your whole life. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so they're going to use that against you to, hey, it must be an angel. This psychic medium is talking to an angel. She's talking to my grandma, or whatever the case is. And so you have to guard yourself, and you have to understand that, like, you can access Christ anytime you want. You can access this light and this energy anytime you want. And it's not coming from anything else, right? It's not it's coming from within you, because God is within you. Right. And, I had this incident in my yard too, where I had these divining rods, or, it's also known as water witching, but a lot of people know it as divining rods. And I got these copper rods because I was like, oh, this is cool, because I'm doing a documentary on the 33rd parallel. This would be cool to like use them to find energy lines and stuff like that. And so I had them at my house for a while, and decided just a few weeks ago to take them out and see if they work. So I know that people use them to find water, right? So I used them. I pulled them out, and I walked over to the water, and they crossed. I was like, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize you could for real find water with these things. That's bizarre. So I got my son to try it. And I even did this little experiment where I stood to the left of it, or excuse me, to the right of it. And I was pointing the things at my house, and the water is over here to the left. And I said, okay, where is the water at? Just playing around. And these things like pointed, they moved over. I was like, oh man, like something interacted with me through this thing. Like, what the hell was that? This was just a few weeks ago. And so I had seen this video of this girl on Instagram who talks to these divining rods all the time, and they give her answers. Crosses for.
I was just thinking, I've seen the exact same videos. They're coming up on my feed recently. I think I sent one to my Telegram group saying, "What an idiot! Like, what an absolute idiot!" And she's there like, "Are you something?" Where it says, "Was Jesus a real guy?" It's like, "Yes." Did he actually die? Like, no. And he's like, "Okay, no." And she's like, and he starts going. Her first questions are just innocuous, and then she starts just ripping into Jesus. like
Right,
right at the
yeah.
end. It's like, why have you gone down that route specifically? Is kind of like Antichrist spirit running through the
Well-
whole thing, honestly. But go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
so no, it reminded me of like, oh, maybe I could ask this thing a question. I
Mm.
shouldn't have in hindsight, obviously. But I was like, because my son was with me, he's like, oh, that's demonic. He's like 9 years old, you know? And I was like, maybe it is demonic. And so like I asked the thing, I said, is this bad energy? And it crossed and said yes. And I said, so this is not a good energy. And it said, yeah, this is not a good energy.
Hmm.
And I said, so this is a bad entity interacting with me. And it said, yes. I was like, and it said no to another question I asked too, but it was like these questions, I immediately was like, oh my God, what in the world? And I took those things straight to the trash can, pulled it tight, threw it in the back of my truck and drove it down to the, the landfill and threw it in the landfill. And then I prayed, you know, I was like, hey, God, protect me, put this bubble of light back around my family. Cause I don't know what the hell I just let in. I don't know what door I just opened.
Mhm.
But I immediately recognized that, okay, that's never happening again. Big mistake. I'm never doing that again,
Well,
whatever that is.
think about what they could just do with two metal pieces of sticks and maybe a few letters on a wooden board, you know, on a Ouija board.
Right.
Imagine what they could do with a AI technology through a computer.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
you have to
I got
wonder,
I would love to talk to you about that sometime. I also have Joel Thomas coming on. I think we're going to talk about a little bit about that as well. Because that's the AI stuff. And man, it's like, that's every time cause I do art, you know, I use AI art sometimes with my, podcast. I like to do, little things or whatever.
Mhm.
And, for like the thumbnails and stuff. And every time I do, I'm like, I'm feeding this damn devil entity thing. I know I am. Like it has to be. I have to be interacting with this thing in some way. So it makes me like want to pull back and like stop using AI altogether and stuff. So that would be a great conversation to have it at some point. But
I cover it a few times on the channel. Yeah, I cover a lot of things on the channel. I'm a broad spectrum conspiracy theorist. You know, I cover everything. But all I'm saying is that example of people don't deny that you can communicate with demons using a Ouija board, and they don't deny you can communicate with energies using these sticks. Just think about what we actually have today, like the actual technology.
Right, yeah.
It's way beyond that, you know. Like people say it's all made up and charlatans, it's all just algorithms. But if you're listening to this podcast, you probably don't believe that. You're probably on board with us 100% and know this is all real, And I suppose we're just in the game of trying to show people this, like it's real. And we're not all nut jobs who don't have any grasp of reality who believe this stuff. It's kind of like, no, we've had real tangible experiences that have proved it as real to us, and we want you to understand it's real too. I'm not trying to sell some like woo or anything, or like I'm not like a preacher. I'm not trying to jam the Bible down your throat, and I'm just trying to share a real tangible experience and show you we're just real people. Like this stuff is,
Yeah.
And I don't believe there's a single person alive today who hasn't experienced or had a brush with the demonic. They might not tell you about it. They might deny it. They might have pushed it down, or they might be scared to mention it to anybody because their friends might think they're crazy or something. Like, but we've all done it. We've all experienced it. We've all had our brush with the evil, with demons, with spiritual stuff. And our job, I think my job, is to make it okay to talk about these things and be taken seriously. And I hope we're doing it. I think we're doing it.
I think so too, man. And that's probably a good way to end it, because we've been here for 2 hours now.
2 hours.
I could talk to you forever, dude. I feel like we have a lot of similar ideas and thoughts on things, and
Mhm.
you're just a lot more well-read. You're advanced in it when it comes to reading and stuff like that. Because I just kind of started this journey of like really since 2020 of kind of going down this path of like, okay, let me jump into the fight. And so now I'm kind of like playing catch up. I'm trying to read every book I can. I'm trying to, get after every little podcast episode I can watch with guys like you. And, I'm trying to figure things out on my own and find my own way to, again, add my piece to the overall, the broad picture of kind of what's going on. I mean, it's no doubt that it's spiritual warfare,
Mhm.
It's like, I think, but the good thing is like people are starting to see that. And I think that's why this show has the little bit of success that it does, is because like you said, we are talking about this openly, and people can come on and share their stories, and even people who don't come on and share their stories. I get emails all the time. I also get family and friends that come up to me and they whisper things to me all the time, you know, like in secret, like, hey man, I had this happen to me too, or whatever the case is. And you know, I'm not afraid to talk about anything, dude. I'll talk to you about whatever. You know, I had this you know, sleep paralysis once I joined the fight. I've had sleep paralysis a couple times, but said the name of Christ and this stuff went away, you know? So,
That's right.
you know, every time I have had any inkling of something that's going to happen, I always immediately like, hey, God's got this, Christ has got this. And that's really the takeaway I think a lot of people should take from this, you know, and especially with Paul's story of, you know, saying the name of Christ and this thing, you know, it literally, you know, it changed his, it saved his life. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, when you say the name of Christ, it will literally save your life. So, but listen, man, again, if you want to, if you don't mind, can you plug your book one more time and tell everybody where they can find you at?
Sure, but yeah. So the book is The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. There it is. My wife helped me with the front cover, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
I know what it sounds like, but it's not as crazy as it sounds. You know, really, what you're getting here is biblical history in the first half, and then the history of the costume of a clown and secret society's involvement with its creation, and talk about some of the basic first common topics on ancestor spirit worship, clown societies in North America, the Heyoka and things like that, and then psychedelics and its connection to the spirit realm and the jesters and the DMT jesters. So that's kind of the first book summarized there. The second one will be about all the folk traditions seen all over the earth who also use the same costume to channel their ancestors, which will be the clowns. But you can get all the body of work that the book hasn't yet documented in video format, which is on my channel on YouTube called Understanding Conspiracy. So there's a playlist on there called The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. It's 44 episodes and loads of extra content surrounding that as well. I've done, like I said, over like 50 podcasts summarizing a lot of work with visuals, some extra videos all through my channel, kind of going deeper into subtopics within all of this. I've really fleshed this out with visuals on the channel. But if you just want the dry history, information, references, there's like 300 references in this book, you know, to all the sources. It's scholarly work. I've not just made this up and pulled it out of thin air. I've got all the receipts to back up every claim I'm making, you know. Get the book. It's literally brimming just with information, you know, nothing but information. But if you want the actual visuals, the channel is all there. It's all for free on the channel, obviously. There's just ads on there. So if you're a visual learner, I'd recommend YouTube. If you want the book, go to Amazon. Just type in The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. You can't miss it. It's very eye catching. You'll see it. Give it a go. But I also do a weekly podcast, the Truther Therapy Sessions, where we get introspective and retrospective about what it is to be a truther and the pitfalls and the lessons you learn along the way. And that's up to 67 episodes now. It's been going for a while. We cover all sorts of topics and extra stuff on there as well. My channel's got many topics. Like I said, I'm not just the Nephilim clown guy. I literally cover everything to do with conspiracy from every angle. But I'm not like a wild, like, I'm not the typical, you know, tinfoil hat wearing type conspiracy theorist, you know. I try to bring a bit of level-headedness to everything I do. I'm trying to represent the community in a way that makes people want to join rather than push them away. So I try to bring some humor. I try to bring a bit of lightheartedness to the whole thing. I try to build a community. You can get me on Telegram, Understanding Conspiracy as well. Links are in any description to any of my videos, and we have about 1,500 members on there now. It's a very great community. We're always talking to each other on there. There's multiple subtopics and genres where you can get involved, including a prayer request area, testimony section, memes, naturally, technology, artwork, gardening is a new addition, homeschooling, anything and everything is discussed on there, and we have a great community. So come and join that as well. I'm on there all the time. We have a good laugh. We have good fun on there. So you should join too, Brad. You should get on.
I will.
Yeah,
I actually will.
And that's it. So I do a lot of things, but YouTube is my base and Amazon for the book.
Yeah, it's hard to, you know, you get pigeonholed into like 33rd parallel or Nephilim, you know, Nephilim looks like clowns or whatever. And it's like, hey, I know, like, I do marketing for a living, and I always tell people like, hey man, if you guys ever want to know about digital marketing and SEO and the way that these algorithms work, that's a whole nother conversation that I could talk about for days. Just, some of this, when I get into the weeds of like energy grids and things like that, I'm stupid, man. I don't know much about physics and all this stuff. So I'm going to say something stupid. So I have to take my time and go read through some of this stuff before I start talking about it. But with the SEO stuff and the digital marketing stuff, I've been doing that for 15 years. So I can just spit that out like no problem.
Maybe you can teach me a thing or two on that, because I'm hopeless with anything. My wife, honestly, she hated me for so long because my thumbnails, I just pulled a random image off the Google and just used it with no writing or anything. It's like, your thumbnails are terrible. How have you even got this many subscribers to begin with? How are you doing this? And I'm like, okay, fair enough. So she's made me up my thumbnail game, and right now I'm having a lot of fun because I discovered the drop shadow thanks to her. And honestly, that has opened a whole new world to me. And but things like SEOs and all that, I just don't bother with it. I'm not interested. But if someone wants to teach me everything to do with it, I could appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a wealth of knowledge on that, but it doesn't help us because once your name gets, like, before I joined this fight, you could easily Google my name and it would pop up near the top. Now, when you Google my name, like, you get some some professor out of Oklahoma and some other stuff, and it's like, I see, like, they're doing it. I already saw this before, but they're doing this on a they caught wind of me already. So, like,
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
happened
not
to me
saying
too.
by the way, I looked up your understanding conspiracy. Like, you can't find anything in the first page of Google for understanding conspiracy on YouTube.
No, what you find are articles saying understanding why conspiracy theorists believe what they do,
Yeah.
Understanding the mind of a crazy conspiracy theorist. It's stuff like that, you know what I mean? Trying to understand why your loved ones are given into lunatic conspiracy theories. It's never just my channel, which is just understanding conspiracy. No, never. It happens on YouTube as well. If you search for me, you come up with all these anti-conspiracy theorist videos, understanding the psychology of why people believe conspiracy theories. It's like, or you could just send them to me, but whatever.
That was another reason that was another waking up moment whenever I started doing marketing. And then I found this video of, like, George Knapp talking about extraterrestrials or ultra terrestrials out at Skinwalker Ranch. And then, like, I wrote the title down. So I knew the exact title. This was before I figured out how to screenshot and all that stuff. And then I went to look for it in Google the next day, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I typed the exact title in. So it just that quickly, it disappeared from the YouTube or whatever it was that I was looking on.
A new tactic I've just discovered is being done to my videos is they are bombarding them with adverts. Like,
oh, really?
So I'll do like a 2-hour show, and I'll set the advertising to balanced. Okay, so not heavy, just balanced, and it's supposed to give a balanced viewership experience, they tell me. And it's just default. I don't select it. I've set it to balance as default for all videos, because I just press go, you know what I mean? Anyway, I went back, because I've been getting a lot of complaints about it recently. I thought, okay, so I went onto the recent video, and I had a look, and it was like 50 adverts, literally spaced apart every minute they were playing an advert, and I'm like, who's going to stick around to watch that video? Because you have to press skip, don't you, It's kind of, that's how they're stopping people from viewing my videos now, because I'm not doing anything they can legally take my videos down for. I don't I know how to play the game, you know what I mean? So I'm not crossing any boundaries or lines that they can get me on. So instead, to stop people from watching my videos, they've decided to just put a shit ton of adverts on there, like an unnecessary, impossible amount, just so people can't get past the first 3 minutes, because it's just advert after advert after advert. That's sneaky, that, isn't it? And I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known if people weren't complaining, and I had to go and look.
That's the way to do it, man. It's just sneaky tactics all the time. Again, that's a whole nother topic. I could go down that road one day with you or whoever wants to go down that road. But yeah, it's dirty, man. Especially when you see videos like the episode I did with Tony. The first couple of days, I was watching it on YouTube just to see you're curious. Like, I was like excited to be on a big show and everything, and it did well for like 2 days, and then all of a sudden it just stopped, and you couldn't even find it in Google. And at this point, I just take it as a badge of honor, to be honest with you. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Must be on the right path. Like,
Absolutely.
That's kind of how I look at it.
The people who like what you do will see the work, and reaching new audiences. It's just a numbers game. It's a stroke of luck, and you've got to be a bit clever as well. You've got to do some things here and there to confuse the algorithm, you know what I mean? And things get through, and it's just be consistent.
Well,
I found that's the best.
you got a Patreon as well, right?
Yeah, you can get me on Patreon, and
Yeah.
I put after show talks on there that are too spicy. Like you said at the start of this podcast, some of the best conversations are after the show, and they go on Patreon. That's what I do with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, if you're listening out there, please go support his work, buy his book, donate if you can. This stuff isn't easy. It's not cheap to have programs and softwares and, internet cost and all these other different things that you got to do. It's a lot of time. We've been on here for, over 2 hours now. I'm going to do another podcast tonight for probably a couple hours. So it's like a lot of work. And so when you donate to somebody, when you buy a book, I mean, it really helps out. I mean, that pays for the internet for a couple months or whatever the case is, or just that, that moment when, like Paul said, when he needed that $300 to fix his, blown piston, or the 300 pounds. And then all of a sudden it comes through. I mean, these blessings come in different ways. So if you got, we're not begging for money by no means, but if you guys can help out in some way, please do. Cause I mean, to continue to continue spreading this type of message is very important, because we have to keep putting out a dissonant frequency to their resonant frequency. And the resonant frequency for them is the, pushing the message of Satan. And if we can put our dissonant frequency to theirs, it'll shatter theirs. So make sure you go support him. And guys, if you want to check me out, I'm going to be October 25th. I'm going to be down at Summerfield, Florida for Bohemian Grove. I'll be there probably the 25th, maybe the 26th. I haven't decided yet, but catch me down there with the guys from Nephilim Death Squad. And please make sure they're a wild bunch, dude.
say hi to Dave and Top Lobster for me, will you?
Yeah, I will do. But so I'll be down there for them. Follow me on Spotify if you can. Give me a review, because every little bit helps to fight against the algorithms. And do the same for give him a like on YouTube for Understanding Conspiracy, and check out all the other podcasts he's on, as well as other guys that are in his orbit, like JT Follows JC and the Nephilim Death Squad and those kind of guys. So, Paul, thank you so much for joining me, brother. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. It's been a great conversation, man.
Thanks for having me, Brad. It's been great. We'll do it again sometime.
Sure, man. Take care.
At first, I just thought people couldn't financially justify hiring a clown anymore, Then I started blaming the media for portraying my people as bloodthirsty murderers, cult members, or man-eating space aliens. Of course, the 2016 clown sightings didn't help. Ronald was the first to go. They just took him away. And we stayed silent. Because that's when the book appeared. What new form of clown bigotry was this, I thought? Hadn't my people suffered enough? My clown act was failing because people just weren't taking it seriously. And once they fired me from the circus, I tried suing them for funfair dismissal. My unicycle rusted, and my balls gathered dust. I used to make kids scream with laughter, So much that I could see the tears of joy running down their faces. And then it just stopped. I was so upset that I started eating the banana cream pies instead of throwing them in people's faces. I gained so much weight that summer. I avoided it for a while, but the book's front cover was just so eye-catching, and it was so readily available on Amazon, that I gave in and finally read the thing. I didn't even know what the Nephilim were. Luckily, the author spent the first half of the book concisely explaining the biblical history to me in an easy-to-understand manner, so that wasn't really a problem for long. That's when I read the rest of the book and realized that being a clown is no joke.
I want you to get together.